Edition for November 2021. Wow, the year's almost over. And actually I think this is a masterpiece, and I think this is in great company. And the book is Pedro Me, and the author is the fantastic JUDD WINICK, who's right there.
Hello. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you for
Good
being
to see
here.
you.
Thank
Good to
you
see.
for.
Let's
All
right.
right. We're still San Franciscans. We're not quite touching one another.
We went in. No.
We're both vaccinated. We both washed our hands in the last hour.
Yeah.
And yet we're still like, oh,
yeah.
That's weird.
We just do right.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm really hoping that I was told that theoretically once schools start getting vaccinated, which was last week, that we're 6 to 8 weeks away from the mask mandate being lifted in the stores and everything, and we can go back to normal.
It'll feel weird.
Yeah. It might be a little early just because I think the December cold thing is going to happen at the same time, right? But
I know there's a cold going around my kid's school.
Yeah.
Everyone in the class is getting it, like good old fashioned cold, and everyone's like, like fever. No, just like sniffles. Okay. Interesting.
And welcome
times.
to 2021, people.
Yeah. My comic talk. So we got our COVID out of the way. We did the COVID talk. We're good now?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so the number one question, right? And this is my favorite question, is it's why comics? Why you could be doing things and you chose to do comics, and I think it's paid off for you now, but there's been multiple times in your career where you've been like, I'm on fire.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And so why comics?
Beginning with, I don't have any other usable skills. Not really. Not really. It's pretty much this or like, I don't know what.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, I've always had a job pretty much, since I was, my mid 20s, where I make things up, or draw things and people give me money. It's always been my job. I've not really had any kind of side gigs or whatnot. It's always been something in that fashion. And going from wanting to be a syndicated daily cartoonist to doing graphic novels was because of this.
Sure.
I'm segueing too early.
Sure.
But that's why. I'm like everybody who ever got into this. I grew up reading comics. I never really thought that wasn't the kind of stories I was going to tell.
Yeah.
I'm reading Byrne and Claremont X-Men, and I don't think like, oh, I want to do that. Like, no, I wanted to do Doonesbury and Boone County.
But isn't that a way more insane business to try and get into than doing X-Men? Yeah. Right?
No, there was a couple of cartoonists I met along the way when I was younger, when I was just syndicated.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you made it. You're done. That's pro ball. It's like, it's working out okay. Okay, man, you ride that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of the indie cartoonists.
Yeah.
A lot of the black and white indie guys were saying, no. Syndicated cartoons, that's where you go, and that's where you
because at that point everybody was doing alternate weekly comics was kind of the next big
zines
thing.
Were sort of popping up. I unfortunately
But like the New York Times and the Big Ardian and et cetera, the newspapers. You know?
Oh, well, when I got syndicated, was right when newspapers took the biggest hit in history.
Sure.
It was right when it just started to go off the cliff.
Right.
Right when it got syndicated. So the idea of a lot of times they would launch you and you could be launched like 25 to 30 papers, which you can't quite make a living doing that. But, they figured within a year or two, you could double that. And then, you get into like 500-600 newspapers across the country. Yeah. You're actually making a very healthy living.
Sure. 500 or 600 newspapers. Absolutely. You can make a good living.
And there were tons of newspapers.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, like 3 per city sometimes.
Right.
But right when I got into it, things kind of went away.
Yeah.
But I think it had more to do with, despite the fact that I thought I wanted to do a syndicated comic strip, that I wanted to do Bloom County, that my heart was actually kind of in the long form storytelling that we grew up loving.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know I was that kind of geek
Yeah.
or storytelling. I mean, like a lot of us pre-internet, I grew up reading comics alone.
Yeah.
I didn't have any buddies who read comics until like a few in high school,
Sure.
maybe,
Sure.
and then later in college.
Yeah.
It was just me,
Yeah. This is why I own a store filled with comics,
yeah,
because I was the same way, and I didn't want to be that way anymore, and I wanted to have a place where people who like comics could be.
yeah. We'd actually be
Right.
like an actual comic store,
Right.
which popped
Yeah.
up in our 20s. It was
Right.
like,
Exactly.
they didn't before. It was like, we can have a long conversation about spinner racks
Right.
at 7-Eleven if we want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But it didn't. Those two things didn't click with me. That that's really the kind of stories I loved
Yeah.
best. I think I always thought like I'll do a syndicated comic strip, and someday I'll get to do a TV
Yeah.
special. I immediately wanted to make it bigger.
Sure. But how did you even think that you were going to be able to achieve that first goal at 18, 19, 20, right? Like that's about the right range before the show and everything else happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because I opened this store when I was 21, and I was 10 years earlier than I should have done it. If you know what I mean, right? Like when I think about syndicated cartoons and I think about syndicated cartoonists, what I know, and I don't really have any firsthand knowledge, but I think about guys who started their career in their 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Like they started their career in their 40s. They spent 30 years before that, or 20 years before that, working for other people and learning the hand to hand of,
doing a lot of assistant work.
Right.
Yeah. I think for me, well, it's the folly of youth.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get lucky in that way.
Right.
I mean, that is when you're supposed to take the big risks.
Of course.
When I talk to young people, from like 16 on up, it's like, oh no, go do the crazy dumb thing, because later it's gonna be harder. The worst thing that's gonna happen now is you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
But then you just try again.
Yeah.
But at like 16, 17, 18 and on up, I thought, look, I'm gonna be like Burke Breathed and Gary Trudeau got syndicated from their college strip.
College, yeah.
And it's like, I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll just do that.
I'll just do that.
Yeah.
That's easy.
That was the plan.
Anyone can do that.
I went in freshman year.
Yeah.
I'm going to University of Michigan, School of Art at the University of Michigan. I go into the Michigan Daily. The funny story about going to the Michigan Daily. So that's the college paper.
Yeah.
It happens to be like a really big paper.
Yeah.
Actually an important paper, which was cool.
Yeah.
Like you actually went there and it was a big damn building with like everything you wanted in a newspaper, people racing around, people arguing.
Right.
I went to an editorial meeting and they're like, they are going after each other.
Are they talking fast? Are they talking really fast?
Oh, incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I heard the expression political correctness.
Wow. Then?
This is 1988.
Wow.
And referring to people as people of color.
Yeah.
It was 19. It was like the first, this is University of Michigan. This is like a very bastion of liberalness. I loved it. I was so excited. And at first they wouldn't take my comic strip.
Yeah.
It's going to go on the editorial page. I had no interest. So I kept plugging away.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do.
Yeah.
That's what I was taught.
Yeah.
That's what you do. In the sense that like I would go back, try to repitch it. Like, here's my comic strip. I think it'd be great. Come on.
Yeah.
No. Then someone gave me a tip off that they're hiring someone to do a spot illustration job.
Oh, okay.
So I go in and I interview for the spot illustration job. It's like, no, it's great. So like we figure like you can probably do like one drawing per day,
right? 5
days a week. Like, great, I'll totally do that. And then at the end of the meeting, I'm making photocopies to like give my samples around. And the woman, she's like, a year older than me. Yeah. So I'm 18, she's 19. Yeah. She leans in and said, Judd, our editor, Adam Schrager, wanted to talk to you real quick. Do you have a meeting? I said, he's the editor-in-chief. He's the brand new editor-in-chief. He just want to talk to you for a while. It's like, oh, okay. And he said, so you're a cartoonist, right? It's like, yeah. It's like, this might seem totally off the wall. Would you be interested in doing like a daily comic strip for the paper? I swear to God. His name's Adam Schrager. I owe him everything.
That's funny.
And I said, yeah, I would.
That's really funny.
Do you want to see it? He goes, what is that? I've been coming in here for months.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it looks like, oh, this is great. It's great. Do you think we can start in 2 weeks? Like, yep, let's do it. Yeah. And it ran for 4 years.
Yeah. How much did you have already? Like, did you have 2 weeks ready to go at that point?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was really bad.
Yeah.
Well,
all those early ones are everything.
Thankfully.
The first thing you do.
I mean,
that's how you get good.
Yeah. I mean, you want to look back at anything you did, even now.
Yeah.
You want to look back at a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
wince a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to, it's like, you can't, you
Yeah.
don't want to be at the top of your game
Yeah, yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it started, you know, and I did a daily strip 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And I started off really lousy. And I think by the time I was done, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I got a development deal right out of college.
That's insane.
It was.
It's literally insane.
It was supposed to be. I got a development deal with the Universal Press Syndicate.
Yeah. Which are the big boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they did Doonesbury.
Yeah.
And Kathy and like Ziggy and like
Wog.
Yeah. Oh no. Just so as you can see, it was all going according to plan.
Yeah.
Just like my idols, Gary Trudeau and Brooke Breathitt.
Right.
I was a college cartoonist.
So tell me what this means though, a development deal. What does it actually mean to develop a strip?
It was a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure if they're doing it anymore.
Okay.
It was a new thing where they simply wanted me to, we're talking to comic fans so you can understand. They just wanted me to do pencil sketches of the strip, not a fully done strip.
But hadn't you already been doing the strip? Wasn't that the idea that you were going to take the strip that you were doing? And...
They did not think I was ready for prime time yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So they wanted to like,
I see. Okay.
Like they didn't just like, and a lot of it was college stuff.
Okay.
A lot of it was very topical.
Sure.
So a lot of it was like,
sure.
More than half was just useless.
Sure.
Because some of it is about school.
But so is all the early Doonesbury.
Yeah.
You know, it's all terrible.
Well, I'm with you.
Not all, but mostly. Yeah.
I'm of the opinion they just should have started running it. That was fine. Like let me just redraw this stuff and we'll start.
Yeah.
But I just kind of started from scratch, and it played a lot like a 20-something Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It was just like a couple of guys,
right,
and a gal pal, and they were just doing stuff, and I thought it was great. I thought it was popping along terrific. And what I did is I did 6 strips in a Sunday, all in pencil, not even fully finished. Send it off to them. They give me notes. We talk about it. Notes. We talk about it. Everything was going great. And then 9 months into it, they called and told me that they didn't think it was good enough for syndication.
Yeah. So this is the thing that freaks me out. 9 months into it.
Yeah.
How does that work? I just like as a young person, if they're leading you along and stringing you along for 9 months, they're not paying you to do development, are they?
They're paying me like
enough to pay your rent.
No.
No,
I think just enough to make it that it's not like interning.
Right.
That
right,
like there's some legal hurdle.
Right.
Like it could be, it could have been something like $100 a month or something absurd.
Yeah.
Not even.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, even
just enough so you could say I'm a professional cartoonist.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It was the only other, like I was working part-time at a bookstore.
Right.
And working on the strip and almost full-time at a bookstore.
Right.
And I was living in this rat hole apartment.
Yeah.
With Brad Meltzer in Boston.
Yeah.
That's what Brad and I were doing. All right.
And he was writing his first
novel. It was basically in a closet, the spare room we had.
Yeah.
And he wound up getting an agent, never getting the book published.
Yeah.
And I got fired off my development deal.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
It was a rough year.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, I'm 23.
Sure.
And at that point, I had never actually faced such a tsunami of failure.
Yeah.
But I had nothing to compare it to either. Yeah. But everything had been going along according to plan.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's my big question is you were kind of at the highest high. I mean, you didn't have the actual signed actual contract, but you were on the path, right? Yeah. Like in theory.
Right.
And then bye, kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was so rough.
Wow.
I mean,
that sucks, dude.
Oh no. It was a little bit like dying. It was so hard.
Yeah.
Because it was really that feeling of like this close to my dream.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what I'm gonna do now.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, I guess I'll send my strip out to other syndicates. And I got the form letters back. And then I had to move back in with my mom and dad.
Right.
And that actually leads us to like trying out for the real world.
Yeah. What were before we get there? Let's get there. But like, how were your mom and dad with you being a cartoonist? Did they think it was a viable plan? Were they happy? Were they?
My parents were always ridiculously supportive.
Nice.
And that more so than anything, more so than gumption or talent or whatnot, the fact that I never heard from my parents. Yeah. My whole life that it's not really a job, you should get something to fall back on. there was talk of like, you know, I don't know, maybe look into advertising or whatnot or things like that. But they also saw things going according to plan as well. Like, you know, I always did well at art. My cartoons were actually pretty good.
Right.
And then when I was doing the strip for college, they're going like, this is pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then I got a development deal.
Yeah.
My dad told me after like around graduation time, after I got the development deal, he said, because I tell you, so I was a little bit worried there, especially at the end here. He said, but drawing the cartoons, watching too much television, reading comics, it all worked out. You're fine.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of it had to do with them just telling me that, like, yeah, you go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Did they read comics?
No.
No.
They were, yes, actually.
Okay.
My dad, who is 76, so he read comics when he was a kid, as most boys did back then. So he was actually a big Captain Marvel fan.
Oh, cool.
He read Superman and Captain Marvel.
Like the Jim Starlin Captain Marvel, that era?
All the way.
Oh, you mean Shazam Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, so like the 50s.
Okay.
Like,
okay.
you know, like
sorry, I don't know why I went to the 70s there immediately. Yeah.
Just original Captain Marvel, as he was called before the lawsuit.
Yeah.
Who outsold Superman back then.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So my dad was the first one to buy me just comic books.
Yeah.
And he would just, I think just willy-nilly would just grab like a pile.
Okay.
And give them to me. And I also, we talked to him a little bit about comics, and he loved them.
Yeah.
So I remember getting that. And mine was a house when I grew up. They weren't big readers. I don't think I saw them crack a book.
Huh. Okay.
Ever.
Yeah.
But we got every newspaper in New York State.
Nice.
5 magazines came to the house. Everyone was always reading.
Yeah.
And they read the funnies.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about comic strips all the time.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like, and I sort of got it a little bit. My grandfather really liked comic strips.
Yeah.
And I got that vibe from him. My dad's brother could really draw.
Yeah.
He should have been a cartoonist for sure.
Oh, nice.
My aunt on my mom's side.
Yeah.
So there was a vibe out there.
Yeah.
That like, you're like, Judd's actually going to do it.
Yeah.
And I was kind of told that.
Yeah. What's the first comic you remember reading? The one that like ping comics?
Probably, I'm going to put Mad Magazine aside.
Yeah.
Because as long as I remember, I was reading Mad Magazine, but that was like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
It was Garfield.
Nice. Okay.
Because I was reading Garfield when we were kids. It first started running in like 78.
Yeah.
So I think I'd read about it.
Right.
And then I think my folks also read about it and got me the second Garfield collection, like Garfield at Large or whatever it was. Yeah. And I read that thing over and over again. And I thought it was the funniest damn I just thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I first decided, like, I'm going to do a comic strip. And I totally ripped off Garfield. I did my own cat comic strip, as one does. Kids, if you're listening at home, it's okay to copy. That's how you learn.
It is.
That's how you learn.
This is an adult show, though. There's no kids.
Good. Okay, then I'll
well, there might be some kids.
Well, maybe I'll cuss occasionally. But yeah, Garfield, that is what really sort of like, I think I enjoyed it. It was drawn really well. Yeah. The earlier ones, if you still read them, they're actually really kind of like funny and mean.
Yeah.
They're like not the he was really downright kind of cruel.
Right.
And I think I kind of dug that.
Yeah.
And later that gave way. I graduated up to Bloom County.
Yeah.
That was the two that were sort of really just these thunderclaps.
Yeah. Well, Bloom County was on a whole different level of anything.
No. And I as someone who was like trying to love Doonesbury, it was so political, and we were kids. But I would
But if you were 20, you would have loved it.
Yeah.
Right.
But there
when I read it when I was 16, 17, 18, I started loving it. But as a kid, I was like, "What is this? Why are they? Why is a cigarette talking to me?" Or whatever it was. You know?
It was. Whereas Bloom County and like Gary Joe was right. Like for those playing at home, Bloom County had a big resurgence when Gary Joe did the one thing that no one did. Time he took a year off.
Right.
I think it was just a year. Yeah. And a lot of newspapers picked up Bloom County during the interim, and they were very similar in a lot of ways.
In a way.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the simple-minded, they were simple. They were, including like he didn't have word balloons. He just
there's a rhythm to them that's the same. But I wouldn't say that the content or the actual thing of it is at all the same.
They were heavy into satire. I'm just saying. Okay, so
sure.
I'll be blunt. The Pinhead's view of this. They're both satire.
Yeah.
And they both had word balloons, which didn't have balloons. They just had little lines going to it.
Right.
That alone,
Fair.
they're done. It's the
Fair.
same comic strip.
Fair.
There's still ones in the paper. That's Doonesbury. It says
Fair.
Bloom County.
Yeah.
It's like, Grandpa, that's Bloom County. No, that's the Doonesbury. Like, no, it's a whole different thing. But that's where we came in. And I think it was more accessible as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, Talking Penguin,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
weirdness, a lot of like
Sure.
nerd culture in there. They talk about Star Trek all the time.
Sure.
So after that, it's like, no, that's the
Yeah.
one I want to do.
Yeah. No, the Talking Animals was the one that brought me into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you know that was what you wanted to do? How did you make comics like as a teenager?
Oh yeah, I was doing comic strips all the time.
Yeah. Were you sharing them with people or?
All the time.
Yeah.
No, I was not. I've often my entire childhood through adult life, when I meet other cartoonists, like, oh no, I would just like do it and just like you wouldn't show people. I mean, for me, like the proverbial ink wasn't even dry.
Yeah.
And I'd run off and show my parents.
Nice.
Or friends or
Yeah.
whatnot. I had no fear about any of it.
Yeah.
You know, initially it was easy because I was probably just ripping off Mad Magazine
Right.
or, you know, aping
Right,
off
right.
Bloom County.
Sure.
But as I got older, it's like the folly of youth. I really didn't think my crap didn't stink, and I was
Yeah.
perfectly comfortable. Like, here, I did this. And then I had a real big run where I discovered Beek Lieben,
Yeah.
who's mostly known for the cat book.
The cats. Yeah.
He did like 9 other collections
Yeah.
as well. I found
I want to say in 1978 that book sold like 8 million copies that year.
Tons.
It was like the sensation of the world.
Yeah.
That year that it came out.
It was a massive merchandising bonanza.
Yeah.
He
And,
needed-
and it was perfect too because the cats were just cats. They were perfect. It was
yeah, cats. We'll put them on a beach towel.
Yeah.
We'll be on a calendar. We'll put them on a mug.
Yeah.
And he sold tons of those.
Yeah.
And he did 1 cat book.
Yeah.
That was all he needed.
Yeah.
And then he did a lot of like insane single panel
Yeah.
pre-Far Side cartoons, which were in Playboy
Yeah.
or just for his collections. And something about how wonderful and surreal those were.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly recommend anyone looking at any of the other Beek Lieben books. Great names like Never Eat Anything Bigger Than Your Head, Biggest Tongue in Tunisia,
Mm-hmm.
2 Guys Fighting Over the Moon.
Mm-hmm.
These are the titles of the books.
Mm-hmm.
Just,
Because he had sold 9 million of his first book,
he
could
didn't
do
care.
whatever he wanted.
Whatever he
with book
wanted.
2.
Just cash in the cat checks.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to do a cartoon where some guy is
Yep.
eating, you know, evil black pasta.
Yeah.
It's literally that,
Yeah.
like some guy
Yeah.
eating and
Yeah.
it's like some pasta that
Yeah.
actually is like done with tons of India
Yeah.
ink. It was just,
I was in love with Never Eat Anything Bigger Than Your Head as a kid. That was like my favorite book. And I guess now I realize that it's comics, but I didn't think of it as comics then.
no, they're
Yeah.
no. I mean, single panel cartoons
are very different. Yeah.
they are different.
It's a different beast. It's a different rhythm. It's a different thing.
Yeah, you know, and
Yeah.
and it's and they're one-liners.
Yeah.
And they're some of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
And he was incredibly funny.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a guy like a cartoon, like a guy standing there, like looking right at the 1950s as far as like suit and tie. He's like wearing sunglasses, kind of like Lyndon Johnson era hat.
Yeah.
And there's a bear next to him, and the ass is facing him, and he's holding it up like, and the caption is "Bear that shits neckties." He's holding up the neckties, and the dude is so serious. It's a perfect cartoon.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, bear who shits neckties. And
Yeah.
that's it. And it's a great
Yeah.
draw. Like,
Yeah.
and he had like 50 of them like that per book.
Yeah.
So I had a long run of all of that. And maybe I had a sense of like, yeah, these are fun,
Yeah.
but no one's going to hire me to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. But you thought they could hire you to do 4 panels a day that
Mhm.
told a story over months, right? Like,
Yeah.
if that.
Well,
You
no,
know?
and I mean,
But gag a day, that's hard, man.
Gag a Day is really hard. I mean, and that's actually, I guess we can go back to Doomsbury and Bloom County. In early Garfield, what they did, and a lot of early comic strips did, they weren't gags.
Yeah. It was a week.
6 days.
Yeah.
6 days to tell a whole story,
Yeah.
one joke
Yeah.
carried over.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
each one had to work on its own. If they
Yeah.
didn't work on their own, then
3 panels, panel 4 is a joke.
yeah.
And it has to work its way, you know, and the art of it is that if you can get it, you know, you're telling a story a week. I mean,
Yeah.
Peanuts did that.
Yeah.
He didn't do that initially, but as he got into it, he was starting to do it. And some of his best stuff, I thought, were those weekly ones.
Sure.
And I still remember, like, Peanuts actually is always in there. You know, Snoopy got into a fight with a cat next door. Okay, and the fight happens off camera. They're watching it happen, and they're describing it. It's hysterical. And he had a running gag. Snoopy does not talk in the comic strip. Some of you may or may not know this. So when Snoopy went and fought this cat because he thought this cat's attacking Woodstock.
Yeah.
And he leaps in there, fight. And he comes out and he like said, it wasn't Woodstock. He had a yellow glove. I thought that was the funniest damn thing. It's still funny. Like, it was sort of like non-Peanuts funny.
Yeah.
And the gag kept escalating because they were talking about it for a week. And every time I went to Snoopy, he goes, yeah, no, you guys didn't have to fight a 200-pound cat.
Yeah.
Every day the cat got bigger. You guys didn't have to fight a 280-pound cat.
Yeah.
You guys didn't have to fight a 370-pound cat. Every day when he was talking about it, the cat got bigger.
Yeah.
I think he was still holding the glove. It was just, those were, and they were little stories.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know them.
Yeah. Well, because you don't necessarily encounter it that way. Even if your family gets the newspaper every day, you don't necessarily look at the newspaper every day necessarily.
Yeah, some of the criticisms about doing the weekly storylines is some syndicates are saying, like, more gag cartoons would be good because sometimes people don't like pick up a Wednesday. It's like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna like my heroes do 1 week. I'm gonna do it 1 week. I don't think I never thought of myself as a writer.
Yeah.
I never thought of myself as a writer until Bob Schreck told me I was a writer.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Until
you're a cartoonist.
I was a cartoonist.
Yeah.
I was a cartoonist, and it's like, well, I'm not telling stories. I'm doing cartoons.
Yeah.
Even though I was telling these stories in 6 parts. And that's what I did at school too.
Yeah.
I always did weeklies. I always did the entire week was always a different theme.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do it any other way.
When you were at college, were you doing any study of art or?
Yeah.
Okay. And what were your teachers thinking about doing strips?
They had heard early on that I was doing a comic strip.
Okay.
And they were remarkably very supportive.
Okay.
Except some of my painting teachers didn't love it because they thought some of my paintings were too illustrative.
Right.
That's not painting, it's illustration.
Yeah.
And at the time, Michigan was very fine art oriented.
Right.
Unlike if I was at some place like New York School of Visual Arts, they was like, that's illustration, great. At Michigan, they were like that's kind of, it's too much like illustration.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Whereas everybody else from design to printmaking to drawing, of course, they just liked that I had this other gear.
Yeah.
And I had like a modicum of celebrity
Right.
that I didn't even learn about for 2 years. I had no idea until I kind of got out of my peer group for like 15 minutes and met a whole pile of strangers.
Uh-huh.
And they like, you do nuts and bolts? It's like, yeah.
Neat.
It's like, you're JUDD WINICK. It's like, yeah. Like, do you read? Like, yeah. And it hadn't occurred to me until they say, everybody reads your comic strip every single day.
Right.
It's like you pick up the dailies for free.
Right. And you weren't getting letters. Obviously there weren't emails back then, but there was nobody was writing and going, I like this strip. Okay.
For all I know, I was getting a ton of letters and people that would just throw them out. I have no idea.
It's funny because this almost like prepared you for the real world. Like strangers coming up to you going, I love you, or what you do, Probably
in an unhealthy way it did. It probably in an unhealthy way made me think like, I can go on television for no reason. I have no usable skills to be on television except like, I think I should be.
Right.
I mean, which is what reality TV is about, basically.
Well, so the sense I get from the anecdote in here is it's not just you don't have the skills, like you literally have failed and there's nowhere else for you to be.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know what else to do.
Well,
I'll go on television.
Well, that was sort of like, there was nothing, I had nothing going on.
Yeah.
I'd lost my development deal.
Right.
So I'm 23. I'd lost my development deal. So that little bit of money I was getting from them, that's gone. There's no reason for me to be in Boston. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I have to move back in with my mom and dad, which is what every 23-year-old wants to do after college. And I see an ad. Like, hey, do you want to be on Real World 3 San Francisco? I sent us a letter to a photo telling us why.
Right.
And it's like, it's not like I'd have to quit my job to do it. It's like the worst thing that could happen, I guess, is I get on a television show.
Yeah.
I think if I was syndicated, I still probably could have done that. But if I had anything else going on in my life, if I had if I had an actual job that I had to go to, I don't know if I would have done it.
I also wonder if because reality TV was relatively nascent at that point, that you maybe didn't see what it would be over the long term?
Oh, definitely not.
Right?
No, this was, I mean, for folks our age, this was 1994.
Yeah.
They had 2 previous seasons. This is season 3.
And you had seen them or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was a fan.
You never know. Yeah.
No, I was a fan. You know, I watched the first one when I was in college, and I was watching the second one, you know, while I was, you know, like struggling through that year out of college. And it was a very big hit among all of us around our age. I mean, it was Beavis and Butthead and The Real World on MTV. Some of you playing at home. This is a station that played music videos. Google what those were.
They used to play music videos for 24 hours, not 24 hours a day, but pretty fucking close.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
At one point.
Yeah.
I know I have a buddy who worked at MTV for a little while in our lifetime. After videos went away, they tried again. Like, let's do videos. Let's do videos. And the ratings just went in the toilet.
I bet, yeah.
People just did not watch the network.
Right.
And it was like, hey, we tried.
Right.
At least we know. Everybody, we tried.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go back to, you know, reality TV and dating shows. And we're all going to feel dirty, but we're going to make money. Let's go. So, yeah, it was, I wouldn't say more innocent, because when we did the show here in the city, it was considered really lascivious. It was considered.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember it being lascivious.
No, the idea of it. I think,
oh, you mean like being on a reality show? Yeah, sure.
Oh no, like just you know,
you're exposing things that you don't normally expose. Sure, yeah. Culturally, that was not a thing.
You're a sellout before even like you had anything to sell. I don't know. The city in general, and we can get into it later, but when we were filming, people would yell at us. Wow. A little bit here and there. Real people pay rent. And you know, and after living here, like, I understand, but honestly, like,
well, yeah, it was very different then, though.
Yeah,
financially, that was very different then.
Right.
Yeah,
we were definitely, you know, and we were those people. You know, it was like, you know, we were struggling to live in our small apartments and whatnot and everything, and you know, and there was like more art and music and fun, and you know, it was like it was a.
So it was very, very, very different. Then.
Yeah. And it was a great time to film the show, but think about it. So you got MTV putting these kids up in this big house.
Yeah.
I almost want to tell them, like, you should see the house. It's not that big.
Yeah.
But the rent's free and I'm happy.
Yeah. It was shot well, so it looked big.
It does. Everything looks bigger on TV. Me too. I look bigger on TV. We all do. Like, well, that I had nothing to do with. But I've been not quite 5'8" for a long time. That was the thing we heard most of the time. I thought you'd be taller. We know. But yeah, because of a lack of like reality TV at the time, it was like The Real World and Cops.
Yeah.
And it's 94. It's the height of grunge.
Yeah.
And you know, MTV. This sort of seemed gross until the show started to air.
Yeah.
I mean, literally the week the show started to air, that's when people would see us in the city.
Yeah.
You know, there was
how much overlap was there from the show airing for you still living in the house?
None. We'd moved out, and
okay.
We filmed for 6 months. They had learned their lessons from franchises. Well, no, they'd always figured on doing this.
Yeah.
That if we start airing the show while they're still living there, it's going to screw up the whole documentary feel. They knew that.
Sure.
Around the world, they had franchised it and sold the rights, and a couple of film companies and networks started doing it themselves.
Yeah.
Like I think there was one in Germany.
Yeah.
We started airing it a week after they started filming,
Mm-hmm.
and the people on the show were watching it.
Yeah.
And pissed off.
Yeah.
And and it all came apart.
Yeah.
You know, people left the house. People who had like watched the show became part of the show.
Yeah.
Craziness.
So, but the show, because as I said, I prepped for this by watching 1 through 3 and then 20. The show ended with you all leaving town.
Yeah.
You had left town at that point.
Yeah.
Did you not leave town? How did?
Well, I came back to visit a lot.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
I mean,
okay.
We for brass tacks. So we moved in February of 1994.
Yeah.
We finished filming in June.
Yeah.
And a week after we moved out, they started airing the show.
Wow. Okay.
I moved to LA to go chase the snakes because
Yeah.
I figured I should.
Yeah.
I still had no prospects, but I figured I should go there. In hindsight, it would have been just as fine staying put. But I had a couple of, contacts and whatnot, and I had like when we did the show. Actually, there was one a production company that was interested in like animating nuts and bolts. So I was going to
Okay.
work with them a little bit. So I thought going to LA would be fine.
Right.
After being there for 2 weeks, I was like, I just should have stayed in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Now, Pam and I,
You didn't get any interest from MTV or from the production company that was doing Real World or anything like that.
no,
right?
I threw it to them, but
Yeah.
they didn't know what to do with it either.
Right, sure.
I mean, it's like, well,
sure.
I got Beavis and Butthead. And we
Yeah.
make that for like $10.
Yeah.
Can you do your thing for like $10?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, again, I didn't know what I was doing. I was 24.
Yeah.
Like most things I did in my life,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I just say yes and I go
Yeah.
do it and I'll fail.
Sure.
So this time it was, but you know, it was all working out. Or I should say it worked out fine for a couple of months.
Yeah.
We moved out in June, and by August, Pedro had been hospitalized.
Yeah.
And then just everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was it went from being this fun, stupid
Yeah.
experience for just a little while
Yeah.
to something entirely different.
Yeah. So I'm really curious as to how the relationship to HIV was presented to you, because it seems like in the book that you're saying that kind of early on in the interview process, they're
Very.
like, this is going to happen, right? But then the show is presented like nobody knows that, you know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
so I guess my question is, and I don't know if it's the production company or MTV, were people being responsible about Pedro's situation and HIV and things at that point, or were they being sensational, right? Because there was an Oprah show and there was all this other
Right.
stuff that happened, and was he exploited? Do you think?
No.
No. Okay.
I can talk at length about this. A couple of things.
Yeah.
Things we should say. For one, you can get into this discussion as we have for 27 years.
Yeah.
So,
sorry.
just like doing the right thing for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I actually think it was they, John Murray, Mary Alice Bunham of Bunham Murray, wanted to, in 1994, put someone who was HIV positive on television in a real way. And this was light years ahead of anybody
Sure, of course.
else.
Yeah.
And did they think they would get more attention? Yes.
Sure.
But did they also think it would do a lot of good?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But this was all contingent upon finding the right person.
Sure.
So they started putting out feelers. Like,
Yeah.
we are literally looking for someone who's HIV positive
Yeah.
to come on this show.
Yeah.
And everybody got lucky, including Pedro.
Yeah.
That it was him.
Yeah.
He just he was a perfect fit, and it was actually exactly something he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He was and he's still a very young man. He was like, 21, 22.
Yeah.
And he was trying. I mean, he'd been doing AIDS education since he was about 18.
Yeah.
Going to high schools and colleges and conferences and sitting on boards and doing this, and still felt like he wasn't getting the message across.
Yeah.
He would later talk about, like, he said, constantly like talking to the choir, like I said, not preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Talking to I'm talking to other HIV positive men and women
Yeah.
about being HIV positive, and like that's important. But he said, I think what was more important is that we needed to reach the public. I don't think we were doing that. And he felt that if they see me,
Yeah.
just living my life.
Yeah.
He was soap opera handsome.
Yeah.
He was incredibly charming.
Yeah.
And he was the first person cast on our season.
Yeah.
Like, they found him.
Yeah. And then build everything else around.
They
that.
built everything else around.
Yeah.
I mean, Pam still feels that she was cast on the show
As the doctor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that having a medical student
Yeah.
there.
Who could just explain things in a rational
Yeah,
way.
I mean, they knew Pedro was an AIDS
Sure,
educator,
sure.
and Pam will always deflect that Pedro is much better at educating
Sure.
the public than I ever was.
Sure.
But I think there was something important about. I mean, I think they thought about it.
Yeah.
Like they talked to Pam about medicine
Yeah.
during our interviews, and
Yeah.
they saw, like, oh, she breaks it down to lay terms very easily.
Yeah.
So they thought that might be important. Someone to like take the audience through the narrative
Yeah.
of, like, this is what's going on with him.
Yeah.
And they were right, and very forward thinking in the sense that there's some things that Pedro probably didn't feel comfortable talking about entirely, and it was easier to have Pam explain it. So they really were building the show around him in a lot of ways in the storyline, and they told all of us.
Yeah.
I don't think what they wanted was for someone to show up at the house, find out, and freak out.
Yeah.
Now, yes, there was definitely a bit of fabrication that they didn't have us like say on camera, like, yeah, so you told us we're living with someone HIV positive and this is him.
Right.
There were certain rules that we couldn't like talk about the show
In a meta way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't actually say the real world.
Right.
You got to call it the project if you're ever referring to it on
Right.
camera.
Right.
These are just a few, like there were tiny rules we had to follow.
Yeah.
One of them, like, don't talk about that you're on a television show.
Yeah. Sure.
Like just,
Sure.
you know, it's like, okay. It's like there'll be times and maybe we'll pull you back and say, like, don't do it like that, but don't acknowledge the cameras and blah, blah, blah.
How often did you retake? Just out of curiosity.
Did we retake?
Yeah. Or did you, like you said, that they would pull you out and go, don't do it that way?
Oh, no. I'm saying that if you, during an interview,
Yeah.
like, so once a week you sit down for those 2-hour interviews where you're talking directly to the camera.
Yeah.
I don't mean the confessionals.
Yeah.
I mean these really beautifully lit.
Yeah.
Insane things are going on behind you. There's a mannequin head and there's a
Yeah.
strobe light and this and that. And like,
Yeah.
you know, and you're talking directly at camera for once.
Yeah.
And you narrate through the show. That's where they teach you to like, so I'm going to ask you a question. Please answer it in a full sentence.
Right.
So you get our question
Right.
back in there.
You'll be great if you ever have to go to court.
Yeah. Well, in that case, just yes, no. But Pam and I for 27 years, when we're doing interviews, I said, are you going to be asking the question on camera? Or do you want us to repeat the question within the context of it? Like, do you want the sound bite?
Yeah.
You want us to make that shorter? I can make it shorter.
Yeah.
You get good at it really quick.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing. Like, can you say that again in the form of sentence? Can you say that, but don't mention the show? Like, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
And other than that, the only things they would ever ask of us was if we were leaving to like physically leaving the house, like, can you guys wait 5 minutes?
Right.
Because we're not ready to go.
Okay.
And
okay. That's certainly not what reality shows today are.
I don't think
they
so. No.
seem really stage managed.
Yes.
These days.
My understanding is they are, and I can tell you honestly.
Yeah.
There was nothing they told us to do or not to do.
Nice.
I mean, even down to when they got the vibe and the discussion started happening that we were going to ask Puck to leave the house.
Yeah.
The directors came to us individually and said, we just want you to know whatever you guys want to do is what you want to do.
Right. Right.
Now, if you're expecting us to tell us you're not allowed to do that, we're not going to tell you.
Right.
Whatever you want to do.
Right.
It's like,
did that change your reaction to things? Knowing that, or were you?
That was sort of how it had always been. I think they were just reiterating.
Yeah.
It was different for us.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think we kind of had a very close relationship with the crew.
Yeah.
Without knowing them at all. We couldn't talk to them about anything personal. We knew their names.
Yeah.
We didn't know if they were married. We didn't know what they liked, but we could talk about popular culture.
Yeah.
We were talking to them about the Beastie Boys a lot.
Right.
Like, you know, Billy Rainey, who was our sound guy. And,
it seems weird. These people who are observing you that you can only sort of talk to.
We finding out later how deeply involved they, of course, they practically live with us.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they're filming us 70 to 90 hours a week. They're there all the time. And they were as attached to and in a relationship with Pedro as we were.
Yeah.
I mean, George Fisher and Bob Fisher, our directors, told them, so Pedro and Sean Sasser had a commitment ceremony, which was a very big day. So George actually gave the whole crew a pep talk beforehand, said, okay, everyone hearing me now, like, 1, no crying. I don't want to see any of you crying. Okay, please. And secondly, no hugging. I know you're going to want to hug them and congratulate them. None of that. Okay. And later when we talked to them, like, it was important that he told us that, you know, and when the show was over and everyone finally got to like that's what the crew was doing. They were like surrounding him.
Right.
If I got to tell him things and talk to him and, you know, and big hugs and all that.
Yeah.
You know, these people who lived with us and lived through the experience.
Yeah.
And those are a lot of the people we keep in touch with.
Yeah.
You know, they
really? Oh, you're in touch with the crew?
Yeah, a lot of them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them
fascinates me actually. In a
many
way.
of them went on to becoming the titans of reality TV.
Yeah.
Clay Newbill does Shark Tank. He was like, I think Clay, forgive me, I think you were an associate producer at the time. Matt Kunitz, who created Fear Factor, and a bunch of others. He was a production assistant. Matt Kunitz was the one who got the most abuse from us.
Yeah.
His job was to call us up every day and ask us, like, so what are you doing today?
Yeah.
And, you know, just so they could call ahead to, like, if we're going to a restaurant.
Right.
You know, and we were just like, I don't know. And we had pagers before cell phones. We had pagers. There were no cell phones. They literally didn't exist.
They didn't exist.
Yeah. So they would page
Yeah.
us, and Matt was the one paging us,
Yeah.
and we'd go to payphones
Right.
and call back. So we were really tight with the crew, and
Yeah.
we kept in touch with them.
I find this whole thing kind of crazy, you know. Let's talk about Pedro.
Sure.
Though. I'm kind of impressed by his bravery at the age that he is, that 18, to talk about these things, and to not just talk about them, but to figure out how he needed to talk about them. The climate was not a friendly climate. You talk about it a little bit in the book, but I certainly remember at that point in the 90s thinking, I was 21 or 22 or something, like, oh no, this is a disease that kills people, and people who have it have done something wrong, and you should shun them. And
it was an ugly time.
Yeah.
Beginning with the most unfortunate part, that there was basically no medical procedures or pathways to extend your life.
Yeah.
If you contracted HIV, the clock was ticking. We know now that some people had a virus that was stronger than others, or your basic physiology. We don't know. And we know now that everything that they did from AZT or whatnot did nothing.
Yeah.
So it was just a roll of the dice. Not even roll of the dice. It's just it was a ticking clock. You know,
Yeah.
either you got sick or you didn't get sick.
Yeah.
You got an opportunistic infection. If you got several of these, you would probably die. And on top of that, so much of the world was terrified of you, hated you. You know, this was, so 94 is not too long after Ryan White, who was one of the most important parts of the movement prior to Pedro. You know, people talk about them synonymously, about sort of these two benchmarks of changing the hearts and minds of the country and the world. When you got AIDS, you died. And that was the message. And when we saw people who were living with AIDS at the time, I talk about the book, we just saw them, they were just on news stories.
Yeah.
And it was always people who were dying.
Yeah.
Mostly men.
Yeah.
And they looked terrible, and so it was frightening.
Yeah.
You know, we were frightened of this. And the mass education going on was lousy.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't, you know, can you get it by touching someone's hand? You know, it's like, well, they say you can only get it through sex, but I hear, like, what about mosquitoes?
I'll go even a step further. I'm like 3 years older than you, and my memory of it was, we don't know what causes it, literally.
Right.
It's gay cancer.
Right.
It's gay cancer, and don't be near gay people because you'll get cancer and you'll die.
Right.
Right. Which was, it's a terrifying message to try and absorb, you know? And thank God things have changed somewhat.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, vastly different in so many ways. I mean, that's the thing, is that it's like made such amazing strides. And at the same time, some of the bigotry is still stunning. Yeah. We're still here. But yeah, so so when Pedro was 18, 19 years old, he was a little bit otherworldly in that way. He was a little bit, you know, I mean, people talk about heroes, and heroes are about self-sacrifice. Yeah. Heroes are about putting yourself out there and putting yourself at great risk. Yeah. And he was beyond his years at a very young age, and also had the ability he was a born communicator. Yeah. He was someone who could, you know, very easily get up in front of people and speak truth. Yeah. And be honest. Yeah. And really connect with people. Yeah.
Despite his fear.
Yeah. Oh no, and it was always a lot of it. I mean, it was always there. I mean, that's the other thing. That's the flip side of it, is that what I learned is that he was so mature and so brave, but he was still just kind of this kid from Miami who had never left home before. Yeah. There was still a lot of arrested development going on, things that he hadn't done yet, things that he finally started to experience by becoming an adult here. Yeah. And in doing this show was a little bit like going off to college for him, a crash course in being an adult. Yeah. And it's one of the things that's just, you know, on top. I mean, he had just sort of begun not just his work, but his life. You know, he'd left home for the first time. Yeah. He put it all on hold. I think that part of it, I think, was why he didn't leave home, is because he would put himself at such risk in all the work he did, the stories he would tell, the people he would talk to, and then he would come home.
Yeah.
And, although he, lived in an apartment with his best friend, Alex Escarano, he still lived 15 minutes from the home he grew up in.
Yeah.
His dad, his sisters, brothers, they were all right there. So he kept coming back to the safety net. In doing this show, though, I think it got to open up the door for him, as anyone would hope, now the whole world knows about you.
Yeah.
And the whole world thinks you're awesome.
Yeah.
And it was really, really great how the almost instantaneous response was so positive.
Yeah.
And he did get to experience that for a couple of months. It's one of the things that I'm going to push my way through, that it still gets me choked up, that he got a taste of what he was accomplishing and how much he reached people. He would never fully understand how much he changed the world in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He never got to experience that.
Yeah.
He had a lot of fun. It was a couple of months. It was insane. He was living here in San Francisco with Sean for a while.
Yeah.
He got to be the mayor of Castro Street.
Yeah.
Sean joked about, we can't leave the house.
Right.
He said, we
Right.
walk around the Castro. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I go, that's kind of nice. He goes, yeah, it's nice.
Kind of,
And
Yeah.
then he said, when it gets old quick, it's like moment to moment, like an hour of it. Like it's an hour
Yeah.
that we haven't been able to go 3 blocks.
Right.
It's like, we just want to go to dinner.
Yeah.
And then at dinner, can we just,
Yeah.
And for Sean, that was hard because he just wanted to be with his boyfriend.
Sure. And it's going to be, I have to imagine it's different for what you or Pam's experience was as well, that you're not an icon. You're not bearing the weight of a generation of people.
No.
Right?
No, it's just, it was for, as I said, it was just going to be this fun, stupid thing that I was going to do.
Yeah.
It became much more when my roommate wound up being Pedro, and we became such good friends. And then the 3 of us, Pam and I realized, unspoken even, that he needed a little looking after, both on the show and then maybe after that. We became, the expression we used, later, part of each other's chosen family.
Yeah.
He needed people outside of his own family. He needed people, Pam and I and others. We didn't want anything from him. That was the whole thing.
Sure.
Not a thing. It's
Sure.
just, it's like, no, we're just going to look out for you.
Yeah. Well, these are the choices we make as adults.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They're our first adult choices, in fact.
Right.
Because before then we've always had someone taking care of us, or now we have to go in the world and be exposed. And
yeah.
And
you don't realize it at the time, but you choose your friends and the ones that stay with you, this is your family.
Yeah.
You don't see that necessarily during your 20s.
Yeah.
Because
you usually don't.
You don't.
Because you're an idiot in your 20s.
You're still a child.
Yeah.
I know that now.
Yeah.
I look back.
You don't think so in your 20s.
No.
You think you're a fucking genius who knows it all. Yeah.
24 years old, I was the one who was most on top of my shit.
Sure.
In the real world house. Now, mind you, I knew Pam was smarter than all of us by an order of magnitude, by maybe 100. But I was the one who knew the show worked.
Right.
And looked out for this and that, and and maybe helped a few people here out of prep for an interview to make sure it's going to go okay. And the directors found out about that and didn't like that necessarily, or sniffed that. But
I almost feel like you knew that this was a game and that you knew how to play the game, right? Like
I thought I did, but yeah,
you wanted to be on the show at least in part, because you wanted to move your career forward. And that wasn't a common thing in reality shows those days,
right? Well, there were no reality. It was the real world,
exactly,
and cops.
Cops.
That was it.
You don't go on Cops to move your career forward.
You don't. No, you're pretty much wearing a tank top and you're trying to come off the meth and yelling at your old lady. That was Cops. No, for me, I did. I thought oh no, I'll be a cartoonist on television.
Yeah.
Somebody will see my work.
Yeah.
Millions of people watch this. Someone will see my work.
Yeah.
Maybe one person who gets to push a button will say hey, you seem like I kind of like that stuff. Can I come look at it? Which is actually, that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's our director, George Fisher, who, when we did the show, didn't particularly love me
Mm-hmm.
because I was the smarty pants, and he knew that. I knew a little bit too much about television, and
Right.
I think they got a whiff of that. But he did give me like amazing advice just when we were done. He said, when this is over, a lot of doors are going to open up,
Mm-hmm.
but you still have to walk through them.
Right.
He said, so a lot of opportunities will come, a lot of stupid things are going to happen, but just figure out exactly what you want to do, but you're going to have to, you know,
Sure.
follow through.
Well, and also the converse of that is you don't want to walk through some of those doors.
Yeah.
Right. Those doors will screw you up if you walk through that door.
Yeah.
Thinking that's an opportunity, and then it's not.
It's like, yeah, no, I think I want to host Studs.
Yeah,
Can
right,
I get it?
right, sure, sure.
You know, instead it was like
Yeah.
quickly learning. Like there was dumb talk here and there.
Yeah.
Because I started doing lecturing, and they said,
Yeah.
"Oh, you could host things."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay. And I like went to a few interviews and whatnot. And they said, I think when I talk, I just want to talk about Pedro.
Yeah.
I want to get up in front of
Yeah,
like, you know, kids and talk
Yeah.
about Pedro. And
Yeah.
I still think I want to. I'm still a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it, it's being in your room by yourself, making things up and drawing them.
Yeah. So let's talk about that post real world
Yeah.
cartooning thing. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't have a contract. You didn't have a prospect. It's actually funny. I watched again. I told you I watched the first 3 episodes. Like the sort of the first thing you say on camera is something along the lines of someone says, "What do you do?" "I'm a cartoonist." "Oh, for whom?" I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know. So you don't know,
Yeah,
and you go to LA, and how do you make cartoons at that point?
I didn't for a little while. I mean, it was just after the show. It was weird. I mean, again, everything got turned upside down because
Yeah.
Pedro got sick.
Yeah.
And then he passed away.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was doing a weekly strip for the Examiner.
Yeah.
Which they were quickly losing interest in as the show was no longer airing. We had been traveling back and forth to Miami, and eventually like moved there for about 6 weeks towards the end. And then after Pedro passed away, before Pedro passed away, I began lecturing because Pedro had about a string of about a dozen lectures he was about to do.
Yeah.
He felt bad because he had to cancel because he was
Yeah.
sick. He was still very cognitive about
Yeah.
everything, and said, listen, I spoke with my lecture guys, and they said they can probably hang on to half the dates and do it if you go. Some of them said, no, we don't want you. But he said, I feel bad. I said, what do I do? And he said, well, let's talk about it. And he just said, like, you talk about you. You know, he walked me through it. Talk about you. Talk about what it is to know me. And said, and we're going to do AIDS education. So he make sure they know these following things. He said, all the questions you're going to get asked. And like, we went through it, and I said, okay, and then, so I started talking, and I started I wound up being like an hour-long lecture about Pedro and myself. And he said, as the straight white guy, you're going to explain to them, like he said, because mostly they're going to be a lot like you.
Right.
So explain to them what it's like to know somebody like me. He said, I come in there. He said, this is me, and I'm HIV positive, and I'm trying to explain to them, my life, and and I'm doing this translation. You're going to be them. So tell them that story. It's like, okay. And so I started lecturing, and even after he passed away, then Pam started lecturing as well. She even took time off from med school. Then she had to go back to med school, and then I got a gig doing illustrations for the Complete Idiot's Guide series because Barry Pruitt, Barry, for listening, thank you, saw me on The Real World and said, I like the looks of that. And he went through MTV and called me and said, hey, so we do this series called the Complete Idiot's Guide series. I want to hire a cartoonist, and I saw you on television.
Nice.
It was.
So you actually got a job from the show. I didn't actually realize that was a direct connection.
No, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
I owe pretty much everything that I have to going on The Real World.
Right. And what are you doing? You spot illos of
go find a Complete Idiot's Guide. I illustrated about 500 of these.
Yeah.
And I would do an illustration for the chapter openers.
Yeah.
And some were real dogs as far as the books and my illustrations, because it's like the Complete Idiot's Guide to Java 4.0.
Right.
And
a cup of coffee with a 4.0 on it.
the author would complain to me like, and let's not just see a bunch of drawings of cups of coffee. It's like, look, you got chapter 6 called Even More Java.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to draw? Give me a little something to work with.
Yeah.
Come up with something. All right.
The bags of beans.
Yeah, anything. I'm working with you here.
Yeah.
So that really paid the bills. I was doing so many of them and turning it out really quick. So I'm doing the lecturing. I'm doing that. And along the way, I got hooked up with Creator Syndicate.
Yeah.
Creator Syndicate had begun like casting a wide net. They wanted to. They were looking for new cartoonists, and I believe I had reached out to them, and then like months later, they thought they cold called MTV looking for me.
Okay.
And anyway, I don't know chicken or the egg which happened there first, but that's how I got syndicated eventually.
Yeah.
And I did my comic strip Frumpy the Clown.
Yeah.
So this is
how many papers?
Oh, I think maxed out at about 25 and change.
Okay, so not.
I know I launched
really
maybe like
profitable.
Oh no,
Yeah, sorry.
Not even close.
Yeah, because I think it was like 35, 40 is probably the threshold where you start
making enough that
not,
full-time job can probably become part-time and whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
I was still doing the Complete Idiots Guide series,
which
took up a good amount of time, but I could still do the comic strip, and I was loving doing it.
Yeah.
But it was in that zone. And this isn't in the book. I'm doing the Complete Idiots Guys. I'm doing Frumpy the Clown.
Yeah.
But I'd stopped lecturing. I'd stopped talking about Pedro, and it felt I'd stopped because it was just getting too physically hard.
Yeah.
Pam was the one actually made me pull back.
Okay.
I was still living in Los Angeles a year later, and I'd gone on another set of lectures, like I'd been in 2 states and 8 cities in like a couple of days and spoke at like 10 schools, and I was just fried.
Yeah.
And the hard part wasn't the travel sucks and all that stuff, but telling the story over and over again.
Yeah. The same story.
Yeah, and every single time, and not realizing now that it's still sort of like having a little bit of PTSD about it. I would put myself back in the room when we lost him. I would tell this part of the story, the exact moment when he died, and every time I would tell it, I would break down in front of these strangers and start to cry. And it was Pam telling me, like, you need to stop doing this because Pedro wouldn't want you to stop doing it. Just keep doing this. This is just too hard. So leave Los Angeles, come to San Francisco, move in with me. And let's think about, what you're going to do next. Yeah. It was after that I got syndicated. But
was she native here, by the way?
No, but she grew up in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And
it wasn't ever clear from the show. I don't think they ever said.
Yeah, we should.
Might have been a mention, but it was.
Yeah. Well, she'd been here for a while already. She was in medical school.
Exactly.
There. So she was undergrad at Harvard in Boston. She was in medical school here. So she's been here for a lifetime at this point. But it was Pam who told me to stop. Yeah. And so at that point, Pam and I are living here in San Francisco together. I'm working on the Complete Idiots Guide series. I'm doing Frumpy the Clown. Yeah. And I'm about a year and change into it, and I just have this desire that I still want to tell Pedro's story. Yeah. But there's no way I'm gonna. Yeah. I can't go back out and talk about it. So I thought about introducing a character into the comic strip. That's how it began. He'll be Uncle Peter, and we'll get
Frumpy the Clown.
Yeah,
because that wouldn't have worked. I mean, you know that now, obviously.
Yeah, I so quickly found that out. Yeah. That's how we got there. Yeah. I mean, it happened quickly that, Uncle Peter, and we'll meet him, and then maybe he'll come out as gay, and then he'll come out as positive, and then, and realizing that, like, it just felt trite. Yeah. It felt overly simplistic.
Well, and also Frumpy's too antagonistic to anything to make that work in a sympathetic way at all. Yeah.
It just, I just in the days that I thought about it, it wasn't working. But I drew a little picture of Uncle Peter, and I'm just drawing Pedro. Yeah. And that's when I thought, like, well, what if I draw the lecture? Yeah. And it started out more like kind of Wind in the Willows, where it was like a whole pile of text and some drawings on the side, because I didn't do comic books. Right. I didn't do sequential art. Right. I'm not John Byrne. I don't do that, and I'm not even Dan Clowes. Sure. I don't, Sure. I'm a doodler as well. Sure. And
it's a different rhythm too, right?
Yeah.
That those 4 beats
Mhm.
versus this is
Yeah.
totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I was also cowed by the fact that I don't draw that way. I mean, I'm talking to an expert. The black and white independent dudes
Mhm.
are really strong artists. They're
Mhm.
really strong cartoonists.
Most of
They're-
them. Yeah.
A lot of them, like the
Yeah.
ones I was reading.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like Terry Moore.
Yeah.
Klaus.
Yeah.
You know, these are guys who I didn't look at like, I can draw like that. Like,
Yeah.
no, I can't draw like that at all.
Yeah.
You know, I draw like Peanuts,
Yeah.
you know, and Calvin and Hobbes.
Right.
But I decided, like, let me just try. And it took like 2.5 years,
Mhm.
starting and stopping until realizing, like, it's a comic book.
Mhm.
Okay, let me just do it as a comic book. Let me just do panels.
Mhm.
And Why I Hate Saturn was very, very helpful.
Mhm. Mhm.
That felt like more like a lived-in sort of like real people talking sort of
Yeah.
thing. And like, you know, like, and also a little bit, if you look at it, I'm trying to ape his art style like a little wee
Sure,
bit.
sure.
For about 10 seconds, I even did the captions underneath the
Yeah.
panels. And it's like, I've got too much to say. I can't do it
Yeah.
like this. And it'll be like 500 pages. And yeah, and it took 2.5 years. And when I was done with it,
Yeah.
I didn't have a publisher yet. When I was done with it, I thought, like, yeah, I don't think I want to do a comic strip anymore.
Yeah.
I think this
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's actually a really interesting click in your head.
It was
Yeah.
a very big kind of come to Jesus moment
Yeah.
that, like, oh my God, all I've ever wanted to do is do a syndicated comic strip. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But after doing this, I think this is how I'm supposed to tell stories.
Yeah.
And I owe that to Pedro.
Yeah.
I don't think
That's
I
crazy.
ever.
I love that story. I really do. I really genuinely love the story. And I love the fact that you did it on spec, as it were.
Yeah.
Who does that?
You know, a 26-year-old.
Yeah, I guess.
Know,
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I tell the young people, like,
Yeah.
no, do it.
Yeah.
Go take 2.5 years and work on a graphic
Yeah.
novel if you want.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, you were right, obviously, that there was interest in this, but did you have to sell it? Like, what was the process at that point?
It was not. It took a fair amount of doing.
Okay.
You know, my literary agent for this book was a woman named Jill Neeram, who Brad Meltzer was Brad Meltzer's literary agent.
Okay.
So Brad said, you should meet Jill. I sent it to Jill. She goes, I love it.
Yeah.
And I said, so what are we going to do? She goes, I have no idea. I've never done anything like this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had an offer from Vertigo.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Really? Oh, okay.
You
had an offer from Vertigo. I didn't know.
Karen Berger and Stuart Moore said, well, actually, Bob Schreck also at Oni. Actually, Bob Schreck was the one who told me. I met Bob at a convention.
Yeah.
We became friends.
Yeah.
Literally recognized me from the show while I'm online waiting to get my book signed by Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
And so we got into a conversation and we became friends. And he was telling me about Oni Press. And he said, I gave him the manuscript before we had a publisher. He said, okay, we will publish this.
Right.
But no one's going to read it.
Yeah.
So
he's so right, yet he's wrong. But
yes.
Yeah.
But he was trying to. Yeah. I think in that way also, he was a good rabbi.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want me to get all too excited about someone saying like, I'm going to publish this.
Right.
He said, I think you should go try to find a mainstream publisher.
Yeah. This was before they got involved with Frumpy, etc.
No, long before.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, long before. This was when they just had started.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we'll go out on a limb. This will be our first graphic novel. He said, I'll do this.
Yeah.
He said, but I want you to I think you should exhaust all efforts to get it done in the mainstream.
Nice.
And I even told him, I said,
thank you, Bob.
Yeah. No,
seriously, man.
I pretty much bring up Bob during every one of these conversations or anytime I'm talking about, like, I owe him pretty much everything.
Yeah.
From this, even before I started writing Green Lantern. No, I even talked to him about like that Vertigo, and even Karen Stewart had said like, if you get a mainstream publisher, you should. They said it would kill us. We'd like to do this, but I think you probably should. It probably should. They even said it should be in bookstores.
Right.
And it's like,
and I want to say that's post Paradox, right? So
yeah.
So they had already figured out that they didn't know how to sell to bookstores.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and
they were doing probably Stuck Rubber Baby right around the same time, right?
That had already come out.
Yeah, and it didn't sell for them particularly well, as I recall. Yeah.
No, I mean it is a masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece.
It is a unbelievably beautiful story, top to bottom, page to page. And it's criminal that more people don't. I'm going to talk about that one every time I can.
Yeah.
But they too were super Menchie and in the mentor space of, well, of course we want to, but if you know, and when I said like, well, Henry Holt is interested in doing that, it's like, you should probably go with them. It's like, okay. And again, not a lot of mainstream graphic novels at that point at all.
Yeah.
You know, that was still, comic stores were big-ish in 90, we're saying like, so around 2000.
Yeah.
These are good,
This is
right?
2000, yeah.
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 You know, but getting comics were still in that, when it came to graphic novels and bookstores, you get Superman alongside Sandman,
Sure.
alongside Mouse.
Sure. And we hadn't hit the librarian renaissance, which would come like 5 years later,
right?
Where the librarians would all go, "Hey, wait a minute, we just graduated from library school, and we really like Raina. Shut up."
Yeah,
you know, and that changed everything. About
I was lucky enough to be in that around 2000.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it another way. I had this vision of librarians being the old ladies with buns in their hair, and
at one point they were,
yeah. And when Pedro Me came out, the first folks in line, the biggest supporters, were librarians.
Yes. Yeah.
I've got more stories than I could possibly tell you of librarians talking about, like, so I put it in the library.
Yeah.
Within 3 weeks, someone comes in to try and get it pulled. And I say, okay, well, we'll take it out of the graphic novel section.
Yeah.
And then I moved over to memoirs.
Right.
And then someone complained about memoirs and moved back over to graphic novels.
Right.
He said, we just kept moving it around. Like
just enough to keep the complaints down.
Yeah. And anytime I say, well, we want to ban it, like, oh, no, I'll take it off the shelf.
Yeah.
I would take it off the shelf for like how much? Like, we have to take it off for 21 days. But I made sure if anyone who needed it.
Yeah.
And and I kept asking, like, why? It's like, there are very, very few graphic novels for young adults. Yeah. There's very few graphic novels that talk about, a young person who's living with AIDS or HIV, a young person who's gay or whatnot. He said, and a lot of these kids watch the show. Yeah. So, like, hell, let's give them the graphic novel. So librarians, and it was like, 5 years after that, like 2005, and on up there, when like the real renaissance of pinko librarians started coming there, which was like just the greatest. Yeah. Not the old ladies with buns in their hair anymore.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
That's great. And the book's been in print for 21 years now.
Yeah.
That's gotta feel good.
It does. It feels great. I mean, it's really it's doing everything that we wanted it to do. And I say we, I always feel like it's a group project.
Yeah.
It's something that, I wrote and drew it, but it's Pedro's story.
Yeah.
With Pam looking over my shoulder. Yeah. She's very much part of it. It's our book.
Yeah.
Well,
it's also a story that couldn't happen without this whole other infrastructure around you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it wouldn't exist without the show. It's weird. It's weird to have an experience that wouldn't exist in the normal world. It's called the real world.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of not, in a way.
So many things had to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. I mean, I'm the first one, and we'll pop off like, well, did you find work because of the show? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's like I owe like everything. Like, yeah. I met
but not
Pam.
The work you thought you were going to do.
No.
At the time. That's funny. It's so funny. Life is funny.
Yeah.
And you met Pam. God, what a gorgeous goddamn love story. I gotta say, man. And you have 2 beautiful kids, and that's fantastic. I don't know.
Thank you.
You're lucky.
I know.
You're both lucky.
Well, no, I know, and I shudder to think, 30,000 people tried out for the show.
Yeah.
And I just, as I say, they could have been, some other boring white guy could have been on that season, and you and I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah.
I would not have met Pam, and the 2 young people who live in our house wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
It's frightening sometimes that that we met on a television show, and I also,
and you ended up back here too.
Yeah. Oh no, just so many things because of wanting to do this dopey show.
Yeah.
Who I became as a person, who I share my life with, and the storyteller I became.
Yeah.
Which I didn't see that coming a mile away either. you know, it's you know, it is a direct line
Yeah.
from Pedro saying, listen, so I'm not gonna be able to do these lectures, to today I'm working on my, you know, 9th HILO book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, there's at least 2 more jumps here that I don't want to walk away without covering. So so let's talk about the superhero stuff
Sure.
and the DC thing.
Sure.
And you became a writer then.
yeah. Yeah.
And you're not a cartoonist anymore.
hmm
You come out with a book
Yeah.
that sort of cements you, I think, as a cartoonist, right? Because
right.
you're actually telling something in cartoons that's real and true,
hmm
you know? And then you go and you start writing superhero comics.
hmm
And you start writing superhero comics at a point where I would personally say that I feel like DC's thing in the business was making things dark and making things
Yes.
complicated, and you know, characters dying and sadness and horror, and rather than the joy and love, which is what we grew up in our comics, right?
Yes. And I have a lot to say about this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, beginning with, it's so I had done Pedro Me, which Bob Schreck had read from the earliest. I then turned around and did Barry Ween, The Adventures of Barry Ween, Boy Genius. Why? Because like after doing Pedro Me, I wanted to do something stupid, fun, dumb, and even
sweary.
So much foul language, and I could draw it any way I want. Really get really cartoony. It wound up getting more dramatic than I imagined. Which delightfully surprised me. It's like, oh, you know what? This is the kind of storytelling I'm supposed to be doing. Bob Schreck left Oni. He went to DC Comics. About a year into his stint there, he calls me up and said, everybody I've ever known has called and bugged me about writing superhero comics except you. I said, why is that? And he said, do you not like superhero comics? Like, no, I love them. I said, but I don't know the first thing about writing superhero comics. Like, he's like, you are so wrong. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, no. He said, you can totally, and you know, he's like, he wasn't like, this shit's easy. That wasn't it. He's saying like, I know the stories you can tell. And you could definitely do this. He said, I'm interested in seeing you do this.
Right.
And it's like, okay. He said, so do you like superhero comics? Like, Bob, I love superhero comics. I said, I go every week. I said, I've been reading them since I was a child. You know, of course I love them. And I said, but I wouldn't know how to even start writing them. It's like, okay, tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna send you some scripts. I want you to read them. And then he said and just pick one that grabs you, and then we're gonna walk through it page by page. So he gave me, we talked about it, a tutorial. And he's like, even the best advice he ever gave me, stayed with me. He said, writing a comic book script is like writing a letter to your artist. He said, you know how to draw, which puts you in like the 10th percentile for writers of comic books anyway. He said, you're a visualist, so it's very helpful. So tell them the drawings you want. Like, don't get crazy. I'll pull you back if you're like giving too much. He said, tell you what, so we're going to write a couple of scripts. He said, and he was telling me like, Ron Mars is going to leave Green Lantern, tell no one. It's like, okay. He said, but he doesn't want to leave until we pick someone who's going to come after him, and he doesn't want it to be some hump. And he read Pedro Me, and he loves it, and he thinks it should be you. Like, blah, blah, blah. Nice. It was beautiful. It was a deep kindness, and why Bob Schreck was my rabbi. Walked me through all of it. And so I wrote my first script. I wrote my second script, my third script, even before any of this was going to happen. Bob read it. He had minor notes, big notes, things here and there. Gave it off to Carlin, Mike Carlin, who was editor-in-chief at the time. Carlin said, these are great. So I started writing Green Lantern. Got beaten up a lot as this nobody who's suddenly coming and writing one of the the bigger titles at DC. Bob would always
bigger titles. At
That's
DC.
what Bob always said. Bob always said it's
so
like
the sales are not really that good at that time.
No, he was like, it's Green Lantern. It's not Batman. It's like, stop. Like,
exactly.
It's not like I handed you the keys to Batman.
Right.
He said, I think as a first time superhero writer, it's like, by the way, you've written an entire graphic novel, which puts you like where? And Bob said, and by the way, the work's good, and I'm not worried. And so and it hit a really. It was just an interesting groove. It was a muscle I never got to use before. Right. And I realized quickly, it's like that thing that itch I had about when I stopped doing a comic strip and I wanted to tell long form stories, like, oh, this is another way I get to do that. Yeah. And I was lucky because with Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern, I said, so I'm just gonna make it about me.
Mhm.
I'm going to make him like me. I'm going to make him like a little bit neurotic.
Mhm.
I'm going to make him a little bit Peter Parker-ish in this way.
Mhm.
He's going to be like a 20-something. So I'm going to put as much of myself into it, which is the easiest way to get to it.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And it led to everything else.
Sure.
You know, it you know, from that it led to Outsiders. It led to Batman. And it led to a really interesting 12-year run. Some of my work I'm so proud of to this day.
Yeah.
Some of it is really awful.
Yeah.
I won't pick out which is which, because every time you pick out the awful, that's somebody's favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That is someone's like, you hate that? That's the work you did that speaks to me the most. Like,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm not gonna talk about that. Highs and lows, peaks and valleys.
But I wonder what you think about the sort of the change that DC Comics was going through around that time, and you know, again, not making the comics that you enjoyed when you were a kid. Not that you're making comics that are anti that, right? But
for one, you should know that I'm in agreement with you 100%, which is where I landed.
Yeah.
And I guess so. For those playing at home, I was writing comics during the 2000s, and this is when comics got dark and gritty.
Yeah.
And I know that because I'm one of the guys who made them dark and gritty.
Yeah.
This was
like the kid who got beaten to death with a crowbar came back from the dead.
Yes.
As the villain persona of the person who killed him.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's pretty darkety dark.
That was one of my lighter stories, really.
No, I know.
Like the stuff I did in Outsiders was just like, woof,
yeah.
You know, and Green Arrow and whatnot. But I think we were coming off of, after like a decade and change before we got in there, meaning like me and Jeff Johns and Greg Rucka. Before we got in there was like 10 years of all the same crap story coming out in the mainstream press, like pow, zap.
Exactly.
Comics aren't for kids anymore.
Yep.
But they still were. And we wanted to tell stories which were being taken as seriously as Mouse.
Sure.
And the like. And
even though it's about Green Lantern.
Even though it's about Green Lantern.
No, I get the impulse. I just
no.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways it was the wrong impulse.
Yeah.
There was a middle ground to telling these serious stories.
Sure.
Which didn't go over to the dark and grittiness quite as much and as often as we did.
Yeah.
Because my wake-up call was when my son, who's 16 now, when he was 7, so about 9 years back, he wanted to read my Batman comics.
Yeah.
And I had to tell him, you may not read my Batman comics.
You may not read these. Yeah.
They're just, you know,
they're
just,
I
mean, a fair amount of violence, but deeply intense.
Yeah.
For a 7-year-old.
Yeah. For a 16-year-old would have been fine.
Yeah. Still is.
14-year-old maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah,
depending on the 14-year-old.
Right. But not a 7-year-old.
No.
Yeah.
And I gave him Bone.
Yeah.
Pulled Bone off the shelf.
Yeah.
Jeff Smith's Bone.
Yeah.
He lost his mind.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
I was chatting with Jeff Smith about it not long after that. I happen to know Jeff Smith. Us cartoonists know each other.
Yeah.
Jeff's a buddy.
Yeah.
And then sent us this gigantic box of merchandise.
Oh, what a sweetie. Such a good man.
Just posters, T-shirts, calendars that are out of date, action figures.
Mm-hmm.
And my son went bananas, go nuts, and became a Bone super fan. And I kind of got jealous.
Yeah.
And it was really, and that's the short part of the story. The longer part of the story is that I wasn't burning out at all.
Sure.
Burning out is the wrong word. I was just, I felt like I was kind of telling the same story over and over again. And I couldn't find a new gear with the superhero stories. But looking at my son and looking at Bone and remembering that when we were kids, everybody read Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The 50-year-olds, the 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
They were for everybody. And they weren't dumbed down.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were just mainstream.
Right.
They were just all ages. And that's when I started thinking about it. It's like, what if I do an all ages book?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I did with comic strips.
Yeah.
Comic strips are all ages.
Yeah.
You know, I don't expect like these only children are going to read this. Like, no, I never did it for children. I always did it for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's about language. It's about complexity of stories, but it's definitely not about someone getting stabbed.
Yeah.
It's definitely not about, you know, any number of things that we did for 12 years. I mean, I think I don't regret any of the storytelling. I did my 10,000 hours of storytelling doing superhero comics.
Yeah.
And I learned more about how to make things than one ever possibly could.
Sure.
When you're writing 3 monthlies.
Sure. No, I know.
You know, I mean, I talked about it with Ed Brubaker when a sidebar story. Ed Brubaker's talking about being in a writer's room, not for Westworld, but for another show, and on a television show, and they ran into some impasse where like this isn't working. We're like really stuck, and Ed's like, well, what if we take this character and they do this, and these two characters do that, and then we take that out completely, and then we do this, and then we go there.
Yeah.
And he said, like, the room kind of fell silent. Like, how did you do that? It's like,
because I worked on
the superhero comics, you know, and they got to come out every month. And sometimes they say you can't use Nightwing. It's like, what? It's like, you can't use Nightwing. Why? Well, he broke his leg in his own book, and he's going to be like, you know, up with a broken leg, like for 3 months. What kind of comic is that going to be? Whatever. Okay, I can't use Nightwing. You have to adjust, and sometimes also your own stuff isn't working. You just got to move quick.
Right.
You don't have time.
Right.
And that part was amazing, but we did get, we definitely just got, we got too dark. We couldn't find just that middle ground. That it can be serious. I mean, they found it with the movies. They found it with the movies.
I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. It's a longer conversation about the movie, but a lot. But they do strike this chord. Like, these are movies that practically anyone can see.
Sure.
Not a 6-year-old or 5-year-old, perhaps.
Sure.
But your 8, 9-year-olds, they're going to see Captain America. And loving it. Up to the grown-ups. Whereas the comics that a lot of the comics I did, which again I'm still very proud of, we got pretty dark. We got pretty dark.
What was the experience? Just to stick with this just for one
more
minute.
Sure. We can go longer than a minute. It's fine.
Well, I know. I just, you know, we've been going a while. I don't want to burn you up, brother.
I'm good.
The difference between writing 3 books a month versus drawing a strip, drawing a graphic novel, right? Those are completely different muscles, right?
Yeah. Yes. And which is why in some ways you can do it. When I was younger, there was a time like I was probably, you know, maybe writing 2 monthlies and then writing and drawing Barry Ween, and then maybe developing something else. When you're young, you don't have kids, and you get more time on your hands, and midnight oil can be burned, and also you're full of energy and full of ideas, and also you got this wealth of ideas that you haven't had a chance to use yet. So those things like come. I actually, writing and drawing a book always felt totally different than writing one of the mainstream superhero comic books. You know, that, you know, there's only a small piece of real estate you can occupy anyway.
Sure.
You know, you can only write the character kind of from like, you know, A to F. You can't do the full alphabet. You got the full alphabet over here. It's a whole different thing, which is why, heck, I was writing 3 monthlies when I was writing and producing my animated series on Cartoon Network, Juniper Lee. I was still writing 3 monthlies while doing Juniper Lee. But I think a lot of that, I was late a lot, but a lot of it was like, okay, I'm done thinking about Juniper. Let's do Batman. It was like refreshing. You're going to occupy this space.
No, I dig that. I guess my question was more were your cartoonist muscles feeling like, dude, I just want to fucking draw something.
Yes. And actually, along with my son asking to read my Batman, this is around the point when writing the superhero comics. Again, I don't really feel like I was burning out. But I did note that I was deeply unhappy.
And you shouldn't be unhappy doing comics, right?
No.
Like, just as a base rule, I think.
That was the thing. It wasn't, I really have a hard time expressing it, that it wasn't that it was a chore. It wasn't that
it was a job.
It was a job, but I still enjoyed doing it, but I was still very unhappy. And what I finally came around to, when I finally started working on what would become HILO, it's like, oh, I haven't drawn anything in 5 years. It's like, and I didn't realize how important that was to me, and to get like very airy-fairy about it, to realize like, oh, I'm a cartoonist.
You're a cartoonist. That's not airy-fairy. It's a fundamental realization about who you are.
It's not a job; it's vocation. It's I realized that I need to draw. And it makes me happy. And then I got lucky. You know, it's like, okay, you know, and then realizing like, I'm not sure I can do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, or at least right now,
Yeah.
I don't think I can write the superhero comics anymore. You know, I think I need to try to do this for a little while.
Pam was supportive.
Yeah, there was an overlap period of there was a lack of an overlap period of time. For one, I just told her like, yeah, I'm working on this graphic novel. And I told her about it, and I'm like, it's like, I think I want to do this kids thing. And I started like doing it, and I'm showing her some pages. She's like, this is fun. It's like, I know it is fun, right? And so you seem very energized. Like, yes. I mean, she had been noticing the unhappiness, and so how excited I was getting about this. And then there was at one point, I'd cut back. I'd finished writing Catwoman. I'm just writing Batwing.
Yeah.
And I had just finished like the first draft of HILO. No one's bought it yet. And I'm actually just talking to another literary agent who this is more their space of, you know, younger. Like, so
wait, hold on. Let me just make sure I understand. You had drawn HILO and not had a home for it?
No, I did it on spec again.
Holy fuck! What's wrong with you, dude?
Seems to work out okay.
I mean, yeah, but that's insane. That's like literally, I would not give advice like, you're a cartoonist, work on something for 2 or 3 years on spec.
Again,
yeah,
it worked last time.
Yeah,
in hindsight,
yeah,
I probably could have done a submission, but part of it was I actually put together a submission for another book, which never worked out, but without a literary agent. I just gave it out to editors at mainstream houses that I knew.
Yeah.
And it took them a while to get back to me, and they kicked it back to me and said, like, I kind of wanted to see it as a finished book, and I don't quite see it. And then I even realized, like, I don't think this is even the book I want to do. I said, I think I want to do a superhero book for kids. I think that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, I said 10 years of doing superhero comics there, and I think I want it to look like a comic strip.
Yeah.
Like, I think I want to put all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So I just did the whole book on spec.
Yeah.
While still doing, you know, my comics for DC until I was
which were paying your living.
Yeah. No, very comfortably. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
You know, but then I was down to one monthly because I was just I had finished my run on Catwoman. I didn't pick up another monthly, only because I was working on this other thing. And then I had finished an arc on Batwing, and then I sent in my outline like for my next 6 issues, and then they kicked it back to me with a bunch of notes, which meant I was going to have to try to redo the whole thing. And I was sitting on the couch with my laptop, and Pam was sitting on the couch with her laptop. Our kiddos in bed, and I said, "I was like, I don't think I want to rewrite this outline."
Yeah.
She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I think I want to quit.
Yeah.
I think I want to tell them that I want to stop writing the book." She said, "Okay." He's like, "No, you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm going to not have a job.
Yeah.
After I send this email."
Yeah.
And she said,
"Yeah,
okay."
Yeah.
I said, "No." And she said, "I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You're saying you're not going to be writing any more comics.
Yeah.
You're just going to work on the HILO book."
Yeah.
I said, "Which I don't have a publisher for." She goes, "I know."
Yeah.
It's like,
but you bought the house at this point, right? You paid
Yeah.
most of it, probably.
we have a house.
Yeah.
She's working.
Yeah. She's a doctor.
Yeah. She's not making a ton. She's a doctor for the underserved populations and whatnot. She's in academia. But what she always told me, like, anytime you're actually excited about something, it just, she's like kind of shrugging, like, it usually works out.
Yeah.
And she also has the benefit, like, I'm always right. So with that, so then I'm working with that and that. So I did send it off to him saying, like, listen, I'm working on this other project. And, you know, I love working on Batwing, but I said, I think I'm going to hit the pause button for a little while.
And DC was going through another shift right there at the same time, it feels like.
You know, we were kind of post New 52.
And everything was, okay, now all the books are failing. And
things are messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I was always fine. I always could roll with with all of it because I knew everybody there. And a lot of people had a much harder time with New 52 than I did. In a lot of cases, it was just sort of like, yes, we want to go this way, the Catwoman run and blah, blah. It's like, yeah, you know, I'm going to finish up with issue 11 and I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you don't want to keep writing? It's like, no, go get someone else to do it that way and I'm fine. And it's like, it wasn't sort of quitting so much. Let me finish that arc.
Yeah.
And then I'll go find something else to play with. You know, it's like, and it was always like, you know, and then my name's in the hopper for other titles and whatnot, and I'll pick up something else. I don't know. But this time it was like, no. I mean, you know, a number of people had to come back to me. It's like, so do you want to pick up another monthly?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, are you okay? Like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm working on this, my own graphic
Yeah.
novel. I just haven't drawn in
Yeah.
5 years,
Well,
and
and
I'm happy.
then you fell into the thing that's kind of the best thing for you to fall into, which is HILO, right?
Yeah.
And you're 9 books in now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's a success. It's not merely you're doing okay, but I mean, I feel like this is the biggest success you've had.
Yes.
Yes.
It's doing very, very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. We, you know, there's, I'm finishing up the 9th book. There is the quote unquote no end in sight, meaning as long as I want to keep making them, Random House is happy to do that. They're published through Random House.
Yep.
This small independent publisher.
Tiny.
Tiny, yeah.
Little small
I believe
place,
PR describes it, and it's a truism that they are the largest publisher of books in the English language.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, and they'll probably buy another company soon, and it'll be even more than that. So they're very supportive. I am lucky, and you could attest to this, that I got in ahead of the curve of the mainstream success of all ages graphic novels. Raina kicked the door open.
And you just walked right through, baby.
There's just, you know, they were, I know from Random House was actually looking for, they were actually looking for another Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Without doing Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That's what they told me. They said, we've had ripoffs galore come through here. But it's like, this actually just feels like something that we want, and they were enormously supportive. It did really well out of the gate. Continues to do well.
And then you're an overnight success 20 something years in.
It does feel like it came full circle. I mean, and even in this conversation, as we get to it, like I started with I wanted to do a comic strip. So I wanted to draw it a certain way. I wanted to be all ages. I wanted to have jokes in it. And that is pretty much what I'm doing. Except it happens to be a superhero story for kids. You know, which is
perfect. It's you should not be doing any other comic. I don't think, you know. I mean, you're good at memoir. I wouldn't have picked this otherwise, but
I don't. But I don't know if I have another one of those in me. And
no,
you know, no, I'm just, and I mean that, and like, I hope I don't.
You know exactly what you mean, my friend.
It's like I kind of hope that, like, no, I hope my life is sort of steady and boring enough that, like, oh no, this is a story I want to get out there. Like, no, it might be, you know, just nothing like that. And
so what was your son's reaction to HILO once it finally came out?
Well, before it came out.
That's true, right?
Probably before I had a publisher. So I wrote and drew the whole book in pencil on 11x17 board. So I photocopied the whole thing. Put it in a binder for him and gave it to him. So he's about 8 and change at this point. I gave it to him and said, like, hey buddy, so I wrote this, and it was a comic book I did that I really wanted for you. So I would really love for you to read it and let me know what you think. And he's looking at it, he goes, can I read it when it's done? So like all this photocopy pencil jazz wasn't really his jam. It's like, no, I hear what you're saying, but that might be a little while. I kind of want to know what you think now. Like, okay.
Not a process kid.
Just like, it's like, all right. So he took it up to his room, and you know, he's reading it, and I'm like listening at the bottom of the stairs. It's like 8 steps. I'm listening. And I'm waiting, like I don't hear anything, and then I hear him laughing. It's like good, because there's like jokes early on. Then I hear him laughing some more. It's like, oh, okay. And then I go away, and he's up there for like 2 hours, which was telling me like, oh, he's reading the whole thing. And sure enough, he came back. Like, you know, like, Dad, I'm done. It's like, oh, you read the whole thing? He's like, yeah, I read the whole thing. It's like, what'd you like? He's like, it was great. I said, what'd you like? He's like, no, I like this part. And like, he showed me, I like this part. Like cool. It's like, yeah. Can I read the next one? It's like, okay, well, Dad needs another year to do the next one.
Another year.
But I appreciate your enthusiasm. That's kind of what you want to hear. So he really dug it. And then our daughter, who came up after that, I mean, she was like 5 at the time, so she wasn't quite into it yet, but then grew into it. You know, the second book was entirely instrumental because of her badgering me about putting a cat in the book. But I also was very, very fortunate that when I started doing HILO, my children were the exact age that my publisher was marketing the book to. So I turned around and gave them the book when I was done with, like, what do you think? and and all the cheap jokes that they liked.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, good. So you like the burp joke there? And that's like funny to you. Like, oh, you picked that one out. Like, I thought it was way too cheap a joke, man, but you like that one best. Okay, that's fine. I was very, very lucky in that way. It was really, there was a lot of kismet involved. Again, I got really lucky in a lot of ways. The book coming out at a particular time, Random House looking for graphic novels for kids at a particular time. Kind of got in there right before. I mean, there was a Rand Tegelmeyer, Kazu Kabushi with Amulet,
and Dave,
Jeff, and and Jeff, who had turned Bone from being the indie comic.
Jeff built that in a way.
He built that.
He built the bones of it so that Raina could then take the ball down the field.
Right. Well, someone came to him from Scholastic, like, what if we make it smaller, manga size, and put it in color?
If Bone hadn't been there, a lot of other things wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
for sure.
He was beyond, like, he built the railroad that we later like all traveled on. Again, I was one of the first few folks through the door, and it's done really, really well. It is not insanely gonzo successful, but at the same time,
but you make a living from it. Yes,
I get 7 books out, and they all do very well. So.
And they continue to sell over time, which is the cartoonist goal, I think. I mean, as a retailer, I've always thought this is what the cartoonist goal is. I think about, you put in 5 years, 7 years, whatever it was at DC. How many of that is still in print? I think 1 book of all of it. I'm
lucky that there's a couple.
Okay. Under the Red Hood's in print, I know. I don't think the Green Lantern stuff's in print though.
I think they're coming.
Well, there might be a new edition.
There's a new edition. And some of that, the Outsider stuff, I think.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you can't depend on that as your income, right? Like, which is like when we grew up, right? All the independent cartoonists were the Dave Sims and Jeff Smiths, and it was all about getting your library and building your library and making so you make money off the drawing that you did 40 years ago, or
the retirement plan,
right?
You get it.
Stan Sakai, man, the guy's been working on Usagi Yojimbo for 35, 40 years now.
Yeah, and how many editions there are?
I mean, and it's fantastic, and
still holds up, and it's still amazing, and they still, that's all. He just has to sell a few of each edition every year, and boom, boom, boom. I mean, case in point, a buddy of mine had mentioned early on. So you're gonna have to get back to doing more Barry Ween and some more adult stuff, because when your kiddo audience grows out of HILO, you're gonna need something for them. I said, no, I will just wish them well. Because there's a whole bunch of new kiddos being born every single day who are going to find HILO. That's the beauty of doing all ages.
And they're eventually going to have kids. Right?
Oh yeah.
So
no, it's I mean that's comic books, mainstream comic books could learn something from that.
This is actually the and I've said this on the show before, but I'll say it to you. One of the things I like the best about this moment of comics is that kids comics are the driver of a lot of the business, but those kids, and they're going to stop reading comics for 5 to 7 years when they go into college. I mean, it's just what happens, right? Like, you discover girls, you walk away from comics, and they're going to come back and they're going to want comics on the other side of that.
Right.
But they're not going to want superhero comics like you and I did, because that's what we read.
Right.
They're going to want slice of life stories like Raina does. They're going to want things that are zany or strange, or that are the comics 5 years from now, 10 years from now are going to be amazing. Oh my God, those cartoonists, I cannot wait to meet some of them. Because their expectation is much higher than we're not. Those kids are all going to want something that's good, not that supports an IP.
Right.
Yeah,
it's going to enter a new space, and we're going to get to see it in real time, because right now, so we're seeing a lot of these all ages marketed towards kids that a lot of grown-ups read. Work that I'm doing, Kazu, Raina, down the list, time and time and time. We're going to start seeing these young adult graphic novels coming more and more, which won't necessarily have any of, let's say, the flash that me and Kazu and even Raina's doing. Raina stuff is cute and accessible and feels like a living comic strip. feels like for better, for worse in graphic novel form. And like,
Yeah.
it's, but I mean, at some point I actually in my heart ended like, Raina, you're going to do one that's like for an audience that's like 6 years older than what you've been aiming for at some point. I feel her doing that.
Yeah, probably.
I think all of us are probably going to like say like,
Yeah.
I want to do ones that's not just like the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, because literature moved that way as well,
Sure.
with Hunger Games,
Sure.
kicking the door open and creating the
Sure.
young adult market.
Mhm.
There is this market of that's, the 16 to 17-year-old
Yeah.
comic book reader.
Yeah.
Who maybe doesn't want to read
Yeah.
Spider-Man or Superman.
The only thing I will say as a counterpoint to that is that comics are different than prose, and things that work as young adult in prose in terms of violence and sex, when they're made as comics, become adult, as opposed to young adult.
Right, and
right?
We're going to have to, and exactly. I think, and they're going to have to find what that is.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean. I don't think what the stories will be more. They'll be older and more intense, and just for an audience, and a little more subtle.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a thing I do in my work, and that you can only do in a comic.
Yeah.
When characters don't speak.
Right.
When you have a moment where they're thinking. And on TV and motion pictures, they cheat because they put music under it. They hold on the scene for as long as they want to. With comics, the kid, the reader, whoever is going to stare at that blank, that panel where the character's thinking, and they have to figure it out.
They're participating.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see more of that.
Yeah.
Something that isn't necessarily going more mature, where it's more violent, but more mature in its themes, which is, and I'm not talking about, not about sex or sexuality or romance or whatnot. I don't know what it is yet.
Sure.
But we're going to see it.
Sure.
And at one point, you and I are going to say like, this isn't for kids.
And this is the thing that's beautiful about comics, right? Is that we have not yet invented the language.
Right.
And comics will invent the language, because comics is a fluid language.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop. It constantly moves forward. That doesn't happen as much in prose, right? Like, yes, stylistic tricks can happen, right? But the actual language of comics changes over time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's, with superhero comics, there's a trendy of being so unbelievably chatty.
Yeah.
Like so many words. I did that myself.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith was ridiculous at times. I had that bug too.
Yeah.
Like, just like, shut up.
Yeah.
It's a visual medium. I think we've begun to swing that other way.
Yeah.
And we're getting, some of the kids' books are like wonderfully almost surreal with the art. And they should be, and they're busting up the panels. They're getting crazy. And you're right. I mean, that's the thing, is that kids and young readers, or anybody, we're visual creatures.
Yeah.
We live in the world,
Yeah.
looking around at stuff.
Yeah.
So when doing prose, you're right. It's the words going into your head, and you're making your own pictures in your head. For us, no, we're gonna have to figure out how to tell these stories in different ways. And every year someone comes up with a book like, that's so weird and awesome.
Yeah.
Or something just, that turns it on its head in the right way. And, we can name 10 books that do that. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Something else is about to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be great.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
Let me ask you we're trying to wrap it up here. I
Sure.
want to ask you just a couple physical questions about comics creation. You work physically, digitally? What's your process?
I work digitally now, and I almost say that like
for how long?
Since the 6th HILO book.
Okay.
Well, no, it was gradual in this way. Cutting to the end. I miss doing it old school on paper.
Yeah.
What started to happen is I just could work quicker digitally.
Sure.
So what I initially started doing is I started doing my rough drafts on my iPad, and doing it in Procreate. And later I found this terrific app called Comic Draw.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. It's called Comic Draw. I find it to be a lot easier than, sorry, I was going to call it Manga Studio because I'm old.
Yeah.
It's now Clip Studio. Yeah. I'm terrible at math, so I use this one, which is like Clip Studio for Dummies. Comic Draw. Anyway, I started doing my rough drafts that way because it was easy to edit.
Yeah.
I could send this off to it, because literally before that, I'm doing it like I'm drawing my comic completely on 8.5 by 11 paper.
Yeah.
photocopying it, sending it to my
Like
editor.
8.5 by 11, really?
Well, no, rough draft.
Oh, okay, okay.
Rough draft.
Yeah, okay.
Then sending it off to my editor.
Yeah.
She would give me notes. I would literally sometimes cut the pieces of paper up, Post-its, whatnot, send it back to her. And then when I was done, redraw the whole thing on 11 by 17.
Yeah.
Little labor intensive. In pencil, go over it in ink. I would erase my pencils, scan it, then do the lettering on computer.
Yeah.
And when I started doing the rough drafts on computer, that's how I learned.
Yeah.
I'm drawing on a computer.
Yeah.
And the rough drafts were easier to edit. And finally, it was like, okay.
Sure.
Now I'm ready to start inking.
Do you not miss having giant file folders full of physical artwork, though?
Yes. Every day.
Yeah.
Oh no, I miss drawing physically every day.
I also, I wondered, maybe not for you as much because you're successful with this thing, but for future cartoonists, right? Not being able to have your art to sell 40 years later.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah.
Is actually maybe the difference between retirement and not for some of these people.
Yes. Yes, especially for the men and women who are not writing their own stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're working in mainstream superhero comics, they need those pages.
Yeah.
Especially some of the prices some of the stuff is going for now. They can make a lot of money for selling the pages for hundreds of dollars a pop.
Yep.
It's important. I luckily didn't need that. I miss having physical pages.
Yeah.
I miss drawing in pencil on paper, and inking over it.
Yeah.
I do really miss it. But the big but is that I shaved at least 3 to 4 to 5 months off my turnaround. Yeah, it's faster.
So what does it take you to do a HILO book then?
A year.
A year now. Okay.
And
you were at 18 months or something?
I was doing a year, but it was a struggle.
Okay, I see.
And also I knew that as I got deeper into the story, it gets a little harder.
Yeah.
And I wanted to work on the story more before just getting in there.
Yeah.
Like the first couple come out kind of a bang, bang, bang. And we held back. Well, we held the first book back, and I had the second one in the can by the time we came out.
Yeah.
I think the first one might have come out in 9 months, and I was already well into the third one. So by 4, 5, started to really push the envelope. And then by that time I was doing my rough drafts digitally. And by book 6, like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I can ink now and do the lettering on computer. And okay. And it's like, I feel dirty. But
no, you don't have to feel. Wasn't what I was going for.
But I do. I miss it. It's really not the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I tell young people who, when they ask, do you draw on computer or you draw on paper? I said, I draw on computer now.
Yeah.
You should learn by drawing on paper.
Yeah.
Start on paper.
Yeah.
Because I was talking with Jeffrey Brown. I see his poster right there. Early on when I was just starting to do it on there, and I was showing Jeffrey, like, here, try drawing on an iPad.
Yeah.
I gave my iPad, like we're on tour together. And he said, I couldn't do it this way.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, has Jeffrey shown you his sketchbooks?
Yes.
Which are insane. I cannot believe how much detail he puts into these little teeny tiny drawings.
His rough drafts. His rough drafts
are finished.
Just tiny versions of miniature versions of the actual book.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But
totally crazy. Yeah.
He said, but this is the only way I can do it.
Yeah. And
he also felt that doing it on a computer, he said having that return button, that step back button.
Yeah.
He said I'd never get anything done.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Sometimes I find like just keep drawing. Don't try to overwork it.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten actually a little bit too precious. Because I want to get messier again.
Yeah.
That's going to take a little bit of work. I don't know how that's going to happen, but we'll see. So I'm doing digital now, and it's mostly again, about getting it done quicker.
Yeah.
And also, I know I probably saved my wrist.
Yeah.
A lot.
Sure. It's interesting when you talk about getting it done quicker when you're also being less messy, which means you're being more precise.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of a weird circle to square there.
Well,
or square to circle, whichever it is. Yeah.
I think it allows you to get prissy about it.
Yeah.
Well, when you if you lay down some ink and you don't like it, then you got to go for the whiteout.
Yeah.
This surgery.
Right.
This is like now your whole life has changed. Now you're like putting down whiteout, it doesn't work, and you're putting down you're pasting, opposed to you don't like that ink.
Yeah.
Step back.
Yeah.
So clean. Let me hold it and get a perfectly straight line. Let me get a messy straight line. if I don't seem enamored with working on computers, because I'm not.
Yeah.
It is a tool, but it serves me very, very well because it allows me. I have more ideas now than I have time.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a kid anymore.
Yeah.
And I like doing a book a year.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that all the kiddos who read it and a fair amount of adults, the first thing they ask me is like, when's the next one coming out?
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah.
that's the
I just
compliment.
love the fact that this directly leads you there. I just love it, and I have to think that Pedro would have loved it too.
I would hope so.
I really would.
I dedicated the 6th book to him,
Yeah.
which was, without giving too much away, there's loss in the book, and actually the process of loss, is the inspiration for that 6th book. But also, that was actually supposed to be the end of the series. I had 6
Originally,
books.
yeah.
Yeah, I had 6 books in mind. And so it felt really like coming full circle, like this was going to be it. I mean, so I dedicated the book to him for many, many reasons.
Yeah.
One, because this is a book that's very much about loss, but also because I only got here because I wanted to tell his story.
Yeah.
That was for me, it really feels like this is the first story I'm going to tell.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it at the time.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think
you,
you're hella blessed, and I'm so glad that you've gotten to the place you are. I remember 20-something years ago, us sitting at the crepe place and talking about how do I get into comics, Brian, and and like to see now you've totally made it, and you succeeded, and you're doing the things that you want to. It does this old black heart pretty good.
Thank you, sir.
That's a thing I'll say.
I have very, very warm memories of walking in here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I found a comic store.
Yeah.
And I do not remember how I quite got here, and looking up and they're still there. Like the Matt Wagner's like, holy crap, are those original Matt Wagners? And you're like, you like Matt's stuff? It's like, yeah. Like, how did you, like, where would it, and we got into it. And I met Matt because of you.
Yeah. And it's like the 5th panel or something. That one, he's clearly wearing a maid shirt.
Yeah.
There is no way he's not wearing a maid shirt.
I must talk about this for a minute. There's so much going on. And the fact that you brought that up. Okay. So 1, he's wearing a maid shirt.
Yeah.
2, that is my friend, Eric Chisulo.
Nice.
I met Eric through Pedro and Sean. He was a friend of Sean Sasser's.
Yeah.
And we met him, Pam and I met him while doing the show.
Yeah.
He is one of our closest friends. He married us. He got ordained. And one of the things that we bonded over becoming, like, we had this whole wonderful, terrible life experience of knowing Pedro and then losing him.
Yeah.
And then at some point we started talking about comic books. And he was the one who actually introduced me to Mage.
Nice. Nice.
So that's Eric.
Nice.
Eric Chisulo. And
Hello,
it said, like, you haven't read Mage? Like, no.
Yeah.
He said, I think I've heard about it. And he's like, or Grendel? It's like, I think you heard about it, idiot.
Yeah.
And like, he gave me his actual, like, we'll call them first edition Mage comics, which I read and I went bananas.
Yeah.
Because Matt's stuff, like, it appealed to me. It was really cartoony.
Yeah.
It was Eric. And it's so weird you just pulled, like, clearly wearing a Mage shirt.
I was thinking about it when I went and reread it today. I was like, hey, that's a Mage shirt,
Man, that's some hardcore
well.
secret handshake nerd shit right there, man.
Woo!
Like, because you look at that, that's barely anything. Like,
no, but it's
Mage
clearly a Mage shirt.
You say that,
Clearly.
but it's clearly not. But I know.
Or
Eric, if you're watching, oh my God, right?
It could be a Madman shirt.
Right. But you knew it wasn't.
Because it's black and white.
Because it's not. It's not a Madman shirt. You even knew
that.
that.
That's so funny.
It's amazing.
That's fantastic.
Well, what brought us here.
It brought us here. Yeah.
Well, because honestly,
because it brought me here. I wouldn't be here if that wasn't that. Yeah.
Eric didn't introduce me to Mage. I wouldn't have mentioned them on the wall. We wouldn't have gone to this long conversation about whatever.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. Here we are. Comics, baby. Comics.
I don't know if anyone's still watching or anyone paid attention to any of this. I so deeply enjoyed this talk.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's how it's supposed to be, man. Obviously, HILO is what you're doing. There's nothing else you need to plug other than HILO? Yes.
No, doing HILO.
Good. That's good.
There'll be a new series in the next couple of years.
Yeah. So 10 through 12 are already percolating in your brain.
Oh yeah. No, there's we're gonna finish up with this. There's a 3-book arc for when Gina's the protagonist.
Yeah.
Then we're gonna slide over and Polly, who's our talking magical cat, she'll be the protagonist for 3-ish books, I think.
Nice.
But I'm also I'm on my second draft of an entirely new series.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's called The Mighty.
Okay.
It's I'm writing and drawing this one, so it's about a 12-year-old girl named Miranda who discovers one day that she can turn into a giant furry monster. So she does what any kid does. She doesn't tell her parents, and she starts fighting crime. So it's another superhero story.
Which is what any kid does, yeah.
Yeah. My plan is that I'm not going to have time to write and draw another book a year.
Okay.
So I'm going to team up with. I wish. I thought about it.
Yeah.
I've gone through, but also I want to do. I want to work with some other people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to team up with an unnamed cartoonist.
Okay.
To work on The Mighty and possibly 2 other titles.
Will they wear like the paper bag over their head?
Oh no, I want them to be good and famous, right out there. Go team.
Yeah.
Yeah, because part of me, I missed. I wanted to tell these stories, but you're like, I'm not gonna have time.
Yeah.
Well, stop being such a pig about it.
Yeah.
And give up some of the fun. Let's work with somebody
Yeah.
again. I haven't done that in a long time.
Love
So I'm gonna work with another cartoonist, hopefully.
Nice.
So that's the plan.
Nice.
So
Comics, man. I just.
yeah, it's a blast.
I love you so much, buddy.
Likewise,
all right. The last question. Last question
Yeah.
always is the people watch this series of shows because they want to make cartoons. They want to do comics. You got a piece of advice for them? It can be technical. It can be psychological. It can be emotional.
Oh wow.
What would the thing you would say?
Couple of things. If you're someone who just wants to make comics and they seem a little daunting, I do my book on this app called Comic Draw. For kids, it's free, I think, through school, and we tumbled there. And for grown-ups, it's like, I don't know, it's like $10 for the app, and you get it for life. It works really well. It works ridiculously well. And I think what's great about it is you can write a script. It makes your word balloons, it makes your panels, and it's easy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get cowed by getting over the hump of actually making something.
Sure.
This allows you to make something quickly.
Yeah.
With that, I think the first story you should do should be one that you love, not one that you think you could sell.
Yeah.
As we've spoken here twice, I went ahead and did entire graphic novels.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't sit down and write the 200-page and write and draw the 200-page graphic novel. I got lucky with that twice, but that's just me.
Yeah.
But
do a 10-page story.
Do a 10-page story.
20-page story.
Yeah. We'll also get that sense of completion.
Yep.
And take the advice that Matt Wagner gave me a long time ago, which was your first 100 pages are gonna suck. They're just gonna be really bad.
Yeah.
But you just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And when you get to like 101, something will start to happen.
Yeah.
But you got to get through those first 100.
Yeah.
And he is right. I'm well past my first 100, but he was right. Man, there was like some like really, I had 2.5 years of crappy pages till Pedro Me started, getting there. And I look back on Pedro Me and I do better work now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Comic Draw, it's a great app. Get through this first 100 pages.
Nice. I love it. Dude, so this is the show. This is the book. It's Pedro and Me. It is a good book. You should read this if you haven't already read it. So yes, and you've heard all the things we've talked about, so you understand. I want to say the upcoming business. Next month's Classic Graphic Novel Month Club will be Enigma by Pete Milligan and Duncan Fegredo. I am not sure.
I've always said Fegredo.
Yeah, I'm going to ask him to, and I'll know next month.
Yeah.
But so that'll be next month's thing.
That's one of my favorites.
The adult and kids club first, because that's next Sunday, or this Sunday, I should say, is Rassel Castle. So I'm talking to Paul Tobin and Colleen Coover. And then we're doing Time After Time, Declan Shavely and other people. And they're all Irish, so it's also going to be a Sunday morning because they're in Ireland time. So that should be fun.
Cool.
So that's the next couple of shows, which is fucking great. I would like to thank Jordan for running the show.
Thank you, Jordan.
Fuck yeah. We've only got a month left of Jordan, by the way. So it's gonna be
for love or money. Yeah, that's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's what you want to hear. That's
Lunny.
a good answer.
It's for Lunny. And I want to thank Kat and Zoe for keeping the store running so that I can do things like this and talk to people I like talking to about things I like, which is comics. And I want to thank you and all of the people like him who make the comics, because I wouldn't have a comic book store if it wasn't for you, literally.
Oh,
So
shut up. Thank you for all that you've done for as long as you have. And seriously, thank you for everything you've ever done for me. I appreciate it. You've always been...
it was worth it. Every minute I invested paid me back 10 times more. So that's the point.
Thank you. It's been an excellent ride, and I appreciate you being there for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, my friend.
This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for watching, by the way. Now we're going to go to some credits and stuff, but we'll see you next week, next month, the whole thing. Join the club, will you?
We'll do this once a week. We can talk another 2 hours then.
We actually really could.
Yeah.
I shortened this all. I could have really stretched a lot of that out. So, yeah.
Next time.
Next time. All right. Thank you. Thanks very much for watching this episode of the Classic Graphic Novel of the Month Club. If you enjoyed this interview, please make sure you hit subscribe and hit that bell up in the top corner. You know, every month we look at the history of comics and we pick a great graphic novel to bring you and a great interview to bring you as well. We'd love it if you joined the club, and we hope that you can join us.